Oh, oh. Baby, welcome, baby, welcome. Welcome to the party. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up to my peeps? What's up to my friends, to my fam? It's been a while since I've actually been on a live. And I am excited to chat with you. Is that Jenny? Jenny, how do you get in here so fast? Absolutely incredible. I'm always so happy to see you. I know. What? Really? You need to see my face? Bro, my face really ain't all that. Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad that you're alerted on my stuff. I've been making all these videos today. People have been commenting, responding, doing their thing. And so I wanted to take a minute to just kind of talk about my perspective. Again, for anyone who's new here, I think that language is a conspiracy theory. So I tried to actually have a conversation about what the word really means based on the context that it's used. So like everybody has a different idea of what unconditional love is, but I'll get started on the idea of what I believe unconditional love is. I think it's actually having respect for somebody else and being willing to listen and try to understand, and if not understand, accept what their perspective is. And the majority of the time when people talk about unconditionally loving someone, they're actually normally talking about how they don't actually respect that person's opinion in any capacity. And like I'm actually relatively surprised as to how often this goes on, whether it's between parents, relationships, like anything. And even beyond unconditional love, just saying you love someone, 9 times out of 10, we're trying to control someone's behavior. We're trying to get them to respond a certain way. We're trying to get them to like do things a certain way. And it just is what it is. I'm not against people saying they unconditionally love, but I think people can only really show up for each other in the way that they're willing to show up for themselves. And most people only conditionally love themselves. They only love themselves if they show up a certain way. So of course you're only going to be able to love others in that way. That's just how that's how I feel. And I just noticed that in a lot of relationships and things. So if you are happy to be here, just make sure to like the live. Every time we hit 1,000 likes, I will take a minute to stop and tell you guys how amazing and incredible and fabulous and fantastic and sensational and divine and immaculate and passionate and perfect you are. Was it the part about we can only show up for others in the way that we show up for ourselves? So if you only conditionally love yourself, you can only conditionally love someone else. And like I think like something, for instance, with parents, like how often, like so one thing I've noticed. Let me backtrack on something. I have a lot of friends who stopped going to church for like a really long time, and then once they started having kids, they started going to church because they wanted their kids to understand like their beliefs. And so in turn, I think that like we want for others what we want for ourselves, even if we're not even willing to do those things for ourselves. Logan, I actually do mean this generalization. I don't think most people are even slightly capable of any type of unconditional love because I don't know many people who actually unconditionally love themselves. So I actually mean this end to end. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say all because I am at a point where I do believe I unconditionally love people, but I don't know anyone who actually truly unconditionally loves himself. Now they may say it, but again, saying something isn't the same as actually doing or believing that actual thing, if that makes sense. Like for instance, one of the ways that my mom used to always make an argument for unconditional love was like she would say, I love you so much, I'd do anything for you. You should do the thing that I'm telling you to do. I'm like, okay. So the premise is she loves me so much that if only I understood how much she loved me, then I would understand why her perspective is better than mine. She didn't even try to contemplate to understand why I felt the way I felt. She just always made the argument that she loved me so much that I one day will understand how much she loves me, and in turn I'll understand why her perspective mattered so much. And I've seen every parent do that. I've seen with the except for maybe one parent that I've ever known not do that. And so there's this idea of like, well, I unconditionally love my kids because I'm loving my kids the same way my parents love me. And I just think it's just like a generational thing. It's just every generation now has the opportunity to control their kids to do things the way that they think that they should do them. And that's okay. Like, I don't think that there's anything wrong or right about it. I'm just making a point that I just don't think anyone is even understanding the idea of unconditional love. Like, as a culture, we can go off of movies, off of TV, off of books. Like, how many times in those movies and TVs and books does someone say they unconditionally love someone, but then if they say I love you, they're surprised when the person doesn't say it back? Like, why does it matter if the person says it back? If you love them, like, why do you need an I love you back? Well, because the condition is like, I say it, you need to say it back. You know, the condition is I want it for you, you have to want it back. Also, with 1,000 likes, every time you hit 1,000 likes, I take a minute to tell you guys you're amazing, incredible, fabulous, fantastic, sensational, divine, immaculate, passionate, and perfect. You never have to say it back to me, but I absolutely believe it for you. I remember when it was easier for me to tell myself that I was stupid or an idiot than it was to say I'm sensational or immaculate. And so in turn, that's just like what I try to share back out because I remember what it was like to feel that way. And I never want you to not hear that. So I'll always share it out. But again, let's just backtrack. Unconditional love gets used from the concept of, like, for instance, biblically, people say only God is capable of unconditional love. Only he will love you no matter what happens. Well, so then in turn, as you grow up, your belief is that I don't have the ability to love someone no matter what happens, which means that you'll never even contemplate the idea of caring about people beyond any type of process. So of course it's going to happen because you never believed it was possible. You never believed it was possible to take a minute to try to understand someone's perspective and idea on your thoughts because you were taught from the beginning. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So of course no one is able to do it. Of course no one is believing and loving unconditionally because everyone was told from a child, if you're a Christian, that no one is capable of unconditional love. So why would you even attempt it? What would be the premise to attempt that concept? It just is. And it like, I'm not mad about it. There's nothing wrong with it. I make the point about my own parents. I don't think they did anything wrong. I don't sit back here and blame them for anything. My point is that my parents at the end of the day could only love me from the conditions that they love themselves. So of course they could only conditionally love me. They didn't do anything wrong. They did the best they could. I don't doubt that. But that also comes from my belief in unconditional love. I love my parents regardless. I'll hear them out. I love them. I care for them. I want to be there for them. And it doesn't matter to me what they did for me or didn't do for me. It was all exactly how it was supposed to be. But again, they were only able to love me under the conditions that they loved themselves. And I make this point, about like the parent-child relationship. A lot of parents will make the point that they're willing to do anything for their children. Like I got some friends who talk about how they'd be willing to do anything for their children. These same friends aren't willing to be friends with the person they had the child with because of how much they don't like that child's parent. On one hand, would they be willing to die for their child? 100%. Would they be willing to give their last dollar for their child? 100%. But are they willing to make things work with the significant other that they had at one point that they had the child with? Absolutely not. Just can't do it. So even if the child got to age and asked like, hey, could I spend time with, whatever, it's like, can't do it. And so the question is, the point is like, yes, early on for a child, they are unable to communicate anything. So you have to do everything for them. But as that child becomes conscious and sentient of the world that's going on around them, do you care enough to actually try to understand what's going on with them? Or do you just want to extend your beliefs to them so that you have someone who actually believes the same things you do? Like, are you really willing to let your child go on the journey that they want to go on? Or are you trying to push the idea of what you believe is true? I don't know. Like, it is what it is. Also, just as a side note, every time we hit 1,000 likes, I'd say that I love using everything. So all you got to do is tap the screen. That helps us find more people, connect with them, grow with them. Also, if you have a minute, if you could share the live with someone, I would love to just have more people in the live. If you want to come up and have a conversation about anything, I'm open to hearing anyone. I am not, like, language to me is a conspiracy theory. We're all just trying to share our beliefs and our ideas. And I do have the capacity for unconditional love. I care for everyone, and you don't have to care for me back. I don't care what it is. But at the end of the day, like, we have to, I have to be willing to give the space to anyone, and I do. I mean that 100%. So if you know someone out there maybe doesn't feel that way, or if you want to share the live, or if you want to like the live, that means a lot. But this is just the point of emphasis that I've noticed, that when people talk about love, when people talk about love, they're oftentimes making a point of emphasis around the idea of you should do what I'm telling you to do. Like, how many times do people say, I love you so much, and if the person doesn't respond with, I love you too, it's like, yo, what's your problem? Because when I say I love you, you're supposed to say I love you back. That's the whole point. And if you're not willing to say I love you back, I'm not going to say it. You know, how many times does someone say, hey, I don't believe the thing you're believing, and the person's like, look, I love you enough to do what's really difficult for you, and like, you should just do what I'm telling you to do, without really trying to understand the other person's perspective. Like, we just do this constantly because it's we can only show up in the way that we can show up for ourselves. So, like, if you can only show up for yourself in a way, then you're going to try to control other people so that you can love them in the same way. And sometimes that's also like a positive thing, right? Like, sometimes it is also just a real nice side note. If you guys are liking the live, if you're not, can you like it? Because at the end of the day, this joint's been at 1.1 thousand likes, and I genuinely can't tell how many likes are y'all seeing on your side, because this joint ain't budged a bit. Maybe y'all just don't like the live. That's all good, but just let me know how many likes you see, and if you can, just tap the screen so I can see if this thing is moving. Ooh, yeah, it's moving. Shit, true. Maybe y'all just weren't liking the live. Let me just finish that thought then. For a lot of us, our love for the person, it can only be extended in the way that we love ourselves, which means we'll withhold that love if that person isn't willing to give love in the way that we want that love. Period. That's why someone who is in a relationship with someone where they were with each other and they were at a point, you know, Bonnie and Clyde, down to do whatever, and now they hate each other's guts. Because the condition was, I'll love you as long as you love me the way that you said you would love me. And the second that you withhold that love, I'm out. I'm actually treating you worse than everyone else. Dang, High Desert Witch, thank you so much. But like, what does it mean to withhold love, Laurel? Like, for me, one of the points I made to my dad one time, I was talking to him recently about this. When we would have an argument or something, and he was trying to get me to understand his perspective, and I love my dad, we have no problems, I'm not mad at him or anything, but he yelled to try to convince me to do things the right way because I didn't do well on a test or whatever the case was. In that moment, I did not feel loved. I didn't feel cared about. I felt like, hey, at the end of the day, if I don't show up the way that he wants me to show up, then he's going to withhold his love for me. It's not going to be a time of him trying to understand my perspective and talk to me and understand my feelings. That's it. And now I know when what I need from him is going to be withheld. I couldn't really put that into words, but that's just the truth. And Prophetess, I understand that, but like, my point is like, what is it that you want? Like, as the individual, like, if you were to put yourself in someone else's shoes, your argument is always coming still from your perspective as the person doing something. So you go, I'm only doing it for them because they're not living up to their potential, or they aren't doing the thing that they need to do. And I'm doing the hard thing to show them how they should live. And I'm just saying that if it was the other way around, you would hope that the person might sit down with you to better understand why they are the way they are. Okay, sure, I failed the test. What's going on? What is it that happened? Do you really feel like you gave your best? I do feel like I gave my best. Okay, how long did you take to spend on that? Did you really spend hours studying? I did spend hours studying. Okay. Well, then why don't we next time? Now, maybe I don't think you spend hours studying. Why don't we sit down, have a discussion, and then the next time that you're studying, we'll just time it. We'll really see how you're spending your time. Like, are you really trying to understand what's going on? Or do you, look, and again, it's not that you have to expect other people to understand you. My point is what is it that you want most from others? We all want to be understood, and if not understood, accepted. That's what we all want. I mean, period. Every one of us in our own ways wants to be a part of a group where the people understand us and accept us. It doesn't mean that they have to. It just means that you want to be understood, right? You want to be in a group that when you're talking, they believe you are who you believe you are. And that's dope. That's an incredible feeling. That's why, like, when we're in relationships, we hope for that. I don't have kids, Laurel. Right? Like, that's what we hope for. Us as a segment. Y'all are amazing, incredible, fabulous, fantastic, sensational, divine, immaculate, passionate, perfect. So at the end of the day, every time we hit 1,000 likes, I take a minute to remind you guys how much I love you because I do. I think you're absolutely stupendous. And I remember when it was easier for me to say I was an idiot than it was to say I'm immaculate. And I just say it to you. So, we rock out. And every time we hit it, I'm just going to tell you how much I love you because why not? Not sure. I just want what is ultimately good for them. But Laurel, how do you know what is ultimately good for them? Again, I'm just making a point that this is the cycle. We grew up with parents or guardians who said they believed they knew what was best for us. And then in turn, we get to a certain age, and when we have kids, we oftentimes then believe we know what's best for the kids. Because when the kids are little, especially, we do have all the answers. The kid doesn't know not to run across the street. The kid doesn't know not to touch the stove. But then oftentimes we confuse the idea of knowing what's best for them. Well, then, I mean, you're good. I'm just making the point of culturally what ends up going on. People then believe that it extends even beyond that. You can guide. Here's my thing. In The Courage to Be Disliked, one of the favorite things that I learned about it was that it made the point that as we oftentimes believe that we have the answers for other people. We feel like we know what's best, and that is from our perspective. That's our perspective of it. And we don't actually know what that person thinks is best. And so by taking time to understand that person's perspective, we can maybe communicate our ideas. But I feel like for most parents, most friends, most relationships, we don't really care that much about the other person's perspective and more want to communicate what our ideas are so that that person accepts what we believe is best. And that's when I think unconditional love comes into play. When you actually care enough about a person to say, hey, you know what? You're a sentient human being who has their own perspectives and their own beliefs. And even though you're only 5 years old or 50 years old or 90 years old, I'm just going to hear you out. And then I'm going to communicate my ideas and you're going to communicate your ideas. And then we're going to come together on this because that's what we're going to do. And that's a great thing to do. But you know what that takes? Time. A lot of time. And so it is what it is. I,
Jingo, how are you, my friend?
I am sensational. How are you?
I'm having a wonderful day today.
Oh, incredible.
It's a beautiful day in the high desert. I'm going to go play in the mountains a little bit this afternoon.
Oh,
So, what could be
sensational.
better, right?
Man, that's incredible.
So, I was just, you and I have talked a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
I do love myself. It took me a long time to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I can. Let me back up for a second. Because I believe in cycles of things, and that's kind of where my myself lies. I don't think that I can fully have unconditional love because I fully can't have unconditional hate.
Mm.
If one's going to exist, at least in my belief system, the other also exists.
Hmm.
And I don't think I'm capable of both full time. There might be certain things that I can apply unconditional love to. There might be certain things that I don't like, but I have a hard time saying that I could unconditionally hate.
Okay, I feel that. So do you think if someone has the ability to unconditionally love, they also have to have unconditional hate within them, or that unconditional hate could just exist separate from them?
It could exist within them. I think everything that I fully believe in the cycles of things and the yin and yang of things. For every good thing that I possess, there's something bad that I need to address.
Mm.
And so that I know that that's not a normal thought process for most people, but I see the whole of it. I have to embrace all of myself, the good and the bad. And I find that if I'm capable of this, then I'm also capable of the opposite. I may not choose to do either, but that capability exists within me. It's the yin and yang of life. And I know
Hmm.
that's an unpopular position to hold, but I find it true in my life.
I can understand that 100%. Um, I think for me, personally, I think that once we start naming things, that tends to be where the yin and yang do come from. So as soon as I say, hey, here's what unconditional love is, then you have to describe that through what unconditional love isn't. And for me personally, I go out of my way at this point to try to understand everyone's experience because I recognize that in a way, by unconditionally loving you and taking time to understand your perspective, there is actually something selfish in that to where I actually learn more about myself. And so it's not necessarily even really that much about you as it is about me at the same time. Like that's the paradox of it. When I learn to unconditionally love myself, then I'm able to unconditionally love you, which means that in every interaction I have the potential to grow and learn something more about myself that I didn't even know existed. And and so like in a way it's just like just radical acceptance in my mind. That's what like unconditional love really is, because when I didn't unconditionally love, when it was more conditional, it was I'll listen to you only if you fit within the box that I would like for you to fit into, and as soon as you stop fitting in that box I actually don't value your opinion. And yeah, I mean that's
And,
just that's how I think about it.
no, and I agree with that.
Hmm.
I agree with that deeply. So I always the yin and yang is hard for a lot of people to understand, and I can't say that it applies to everything, although I try to make it apply to everything. If
Hmm.
that made sense, it didn't come out of my mouth right, but I try to force that into it, you know?
Right, I understand that. I think here's the thing that I recognize, I guess. As soon as I name something like unconditional love, I was able to recognize the level of conditions in other relationships, and that some people legitimately can only respect when someone fits within the box that they want. I feel like unconditional love's opposite isn't necessarily unconditional hate per se, as much as an absence of the ability to respect or care for others unless they show up exactly how you want. And I like there is hate for sure, like the hate of someone, but the hate of someone to me is basically saying, if you fit these conditions, I actually strongly dislike you and I really don't even want to deal with you, which in a way is like conditional love manifested to like an extreme, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I like to say that I try to understand everybody
Hmm.
because when I used to say I try to love everybody, then I flipped that on myself and said, am I able to hate everybody? And there
Hmm.
was probably a time in my dark um, self-destruction where I did hate everybody, including myself. So
Hmm.
I can say, yeah, is that really me hating myself and I can't project anything but that onto anybody else? Or is that actually that I have the ability to hate everybody?
Hmm.
So I don't think I possess that ability. So
Hmm.
then I have to go back and say, do I actually possess the ability to love everybody then? And there
Hmm.
are certain things and certain people, let's just say Charles Manson, because we all kind of know his story. I can't love that man.
Hmm.
So, I have to make that real within my own struggle of my definition of myself
Hmm.
and try not to apply it to anybody else. That's just me
Right.
trying to figure out my existence.
I agree with that. I guess here's something I would say, because we're about to hit 3,000 likes, so let me do this first. Y'all are amazing, incredible, fabulous, fantastic, sensational, divine, immaculate, passionate, perfect, tantalizing. I say that every single time we hit 1,000 likes because I just mean it. I love you unconditionally. So you don't have to say it back. I just want you to know that that's the truth for me and the truth for what I believe about you. And sometimes it's easier for us to say we're stupid or we hate ourselves or we're dumb than it is to say that we love ourselves. The one thing I want to add into this High Desert Witch is the point I've been making to people is that I think we confuse love with the types of relationships we choose to be in. Like to me, true unconditional love is respecting that I am going to hear you out on your beliefs, and if I don't understand you, then I can at least try to accept you. It doesn't mean that you have unlimited access to me. Because then what I find oftentimes happens is when I tell someone I unconditionally love them, they then make a point that I should start showing up in the way that they want me to. To which my response is always, okay, well, why is it that you need me to show up in that way? Because that is the next step to me in unconditional love. What is it that I do for myself? When I think I need something and in that moment I can't actually get it, I ask myself, why is it that I need it? What is it about me that says I have to have it in this way? Right? Because the truth is if I can't do that, then that means when things don't work out the way I want, then I'm going to be upset and frustrated and irritated. So I ask myself, like, why is that the case? So I ask the same thing to other people. If someone shows up to me and says, Django, I need you to give me my last dollar, because that's the point people make, right? Like, if you unconditionally love everyone, then if someone needs the last dollar, you would give it to them. Not necessarily. I'm going to ask, why do you need this dollar? because I don't have a dollar or I only have $1 left. If that person says, "Oh, well, I just need to eat something," well, maybe I can find a different way to give you what you need if I can't give it to you in the way that you want it. If your response after that is, "Oh, well, if you really love me, then you would just give me the dollar," my response would be, "I don't have to do anything just because you said, but I am willing to journey with you to understand why you need it and try to understand you better." And so, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that I come to the fruition of just straight agreement, or it doesn't mean that I'm going to do things exactly how you want. It just means that I'm willing to give you the space to better understand yourself and for me to try to better understand you. But I'm not gonna, that doesn't mean you get to control me, because that's what it inevitably turns into every time I have this conversation. It's like, then you should do X. And it's like, well, why should I? Oh, see, you don't really unconditionally love me. No, you're trying to use my words to now control my behavior. You don't get to control my behavior. I'm trying to understand you. If you want to go on this journey together, I'm more than happy to. But I'm not going to allow you to now, because I said, "Hey, I care about you," to then make an argument to me that I have to now give my resources in the way that you believe I should, because that's just how you feel. That's you now setting conditions. I don't have any interest in the conditions. We can have an open conversation. Does that make sense, High Desert Witch?
It makes a lot of sense. And, what's popping into my mind while you're describing that is because you say somebody that I love you and I love you unconditionally, they then put that into their own box and put conditions onto it and turn it into manipulation. And so, oh
Exactly.
well, if you don't do this, then you lied to me about unconditionally loving me. And it's like, no, dude, you just put that into your own box and turn it into something that's you're trying to manipulate the situation with.
Right.
I try to love my fellow human beings for the existence that we have on our planet. I don't agree with a lot of their decisions or their belief systems, but I don't have to. We're
Right.
all in this together. We're all sharing the same planet. And for me to say that I unconditionally love everybody would be ingenuous to myself.
Right.
Um, I just have to love the experience that we're going through together here. And if I can be a part of that, great. And if I'm not welcome, that's fine too. I just
Mhm.
love that we're experiencing the same thing, and the energy that we're all feeling flows through all of us. And
Mhm.
that's a really weird way to look at it. But um, I've oftentimes found when I was trying to figure this out for myself that I opened myself up to manipulation by others, like in a huge way. Like I opened the double doors to it as I was trying to, I just come on in,
Yeah, yeah.
stomp all over me however you want. And then I was kind of tricked into that. Well, if you really did love me, and then I'd be like, wait. This is too much manipulation here.
Mhm.
So I had to kind of work through that and then backstep off of it a little bit. So when you first said, I don't know anybody who unconditionally loves himself, I was like, well, I do. And then when I really thought about that, I'm like, no, I really don't.
Mhm.
I, I, I love lots of things about me, but if I ever get to that point where I'm unconditionally loving everything about me, then I guess I'm in nirvana
Mhm.
because I'm still in this human experience where there are still things that I look at and go, yeah, I'm not real happy with how that happened or how I reacted to that.
Right. But see, like, I think again that to me, unconditional love doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes. It's about the intentionality of the situation. My point about it is that, like, I know I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm very aware of the mistakes that I am going to make. 100%. I'm not going to be perfect. But when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, Django, you hurt me," my response isn't to try to prove to them that I didn't. My questions are always, "Can you communicate to me what it is that I messed up on, or what was the expectation that you had of me that I didn't meet, or whatever the case was?" For a lot of us, we're not willing to have a conversation that talks about us being in the light that we're not, that we believe that we're in, because we have an idea of who we are. I have no idea of who I am. I'm just trying to be the best version of myself. So if somebody shows up and says, "Hey, Django, you failed in some way," I am I want to learn more about their perspective as to why that's the case. I may decide that that isn't the case, right? Like that I didn't need to do what they said. But at the same time, I can actually take the time to try to find out if what they're saying is true. Like, for instance, in this case, I make the point to everyone, "Hey, unconditional love is something that most parents don't actually give to their children." And then I describe a situation that, for instance, happens to me where it's like, I am willing to hear what you're saying, kind of, but at the end of the day, like after the conversation, I'm just going to tell you what I think you should be doing. I'm not really trying to understand it. Like, I'll let you talk, but I really don't care. I know what's best for you and you should do it. To me, potentially, that's not unconditional love. If your response is, no, that's not the case. You don't understand. You don't get it. And then you don't maybe ask more questions. To me, what that's showing me is like, you can only love yourself, for instance, under the guise of what you believe is a good parent. Maybe that is the case of what's going on, right? Like now, I'm not willing to accept any ideas other than the idea that I have. For me, I'm open to any idea. I could be dead wrong right now, and I am more than happy to hear anyone's perspective of why I'm dead wrong, and I'll take it to heart. But in the end, I will work to try to either accept your understanding of what you believe, or maybe I will be able to understand it and we'll be able to come to an understanding together. But like that's the difference to me. It's the intentionality behind it. Is it like, am I here trying to prove I'm right just to prove you wrong and say, hey, you got to accept me? Or am I here actually trying to best understand myself, not only through myself, but also through your words? And like, I'm actually willing to take a minute to understand you. You know what I mean? And Lauren, what's up? Is this your
I
first
just
time here?
Yeah, it's my first time here.
Oh, sensational. Hold on one second. Would you want to say hi, Desert Witch?
No, I hear you loud and clear, brother. I do, and I'm okay with making mistakes. I make them every day,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I learn and go forward. Where I struggle sometimes is like I'll be in a discussion with somebody, and then whatever they are saying to me hits a nerve in me,
Mm-hmm.
and that causes me to feel angry or
Mm-hmm.
frustrated or in denial. And when
Mm-hmm.
I look back on that, that's when I'm like, you know what? That person is experiencing that. That has no relativity to me. I need to get better about letting my piece go in that situation because
Mm-hmm.
what they're relaying to me isn't really have anything to me. It's more of a self-reflection they're projecting.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of things where I look at that and I'm like, yeah, I don't love that. I need to change that. I need to come more back to my base. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the only thing I wanted to say on that. You
Mm-hmm.
got some new people up. I love you, brother. I'm
Love
going
you
to
too,
say
man.
that. And I'm going to drop down so you can talk to some other people. I just want to point out that if you want to hear more about what Django is saying, that he has a link in his bio to stuff that he writes every day, and you guys should go read it. It's a
Thanks, man.
simple couple of clicks away. It's my thoughts, my
Enter my
words.
thoughts. Yeah, yeah. Enter my
Enter my
thoughts.
thoughts. You'll find it in his right, the only link in his bio, and you guys should go check it out. If you like what he
Thanks, man.
says, you like what he's writing. You know what I'm saying, that Jenko, to keep you writing, because
Thanks,
every
man.
time I say that, that's going to spur you to keep writing in that.
I will
So,
keep writing.
peace, my brother. You be
Peace, man.
safe.
You
Take,
too, man.
take care.
All right, guys. And then also, we're about to hit 5,000 likes. So to everyone, I love you. You're amazing, incredible, fabulous, fantastic, sensational, divine, immaculate. And I say it every time we hit 1,000 likes because why not? It's what I believe about you. So I feel like you should hear it today. Lauren, what did you want to add? Thank you so much for being here. Every time somebody new joins, we give a soft clap because you could have been anywhere, but you chose to be here with us. So what you got?
Thanks. Well, I saw the topic on
Mm-hmm.
how unconditional love is used to control others. My thing is, I think like at least from my perspective, my parents try to use God to control me,
Mm-hmm.
and they basically try to make me feel like shit if I didn't believe in their God
Mm-hmm.
because I'm very much like a science person.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is they basically threatened me like growing
Mm-hmm.
up, like if I didn't believe in their God then they would stop helping me, and it was just terrible. It's like, I mean, this was my foster family too, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I had no choice but to be forced to believe in this God. But also we should be, I feel like in general, people should not pose their beliefs so hard on others without, they, like, from my perspective, a lot of Christians will say, they think their God is like the right God, right? But it's not
Mm-hmm.
true. Not everyone thinks the same way. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can't push it down people's throats, and you can certainly not threaten them to believe in that so
Mm-hmm.
that they can control you. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
very disrespectful and very immature, like personally. But when I stood up to my foster mom, like for the first time in like 7 years, she told me, "Shame on you for
Mm-hmm.
not for turning your back on God." I'm like, "Shame on you for not allowing me to have my own voice and my own beliefs."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that when it comes to parents, they need to learn some things. They need to learn that just because you have this child or you adopted this child doesn't mean that you get to control them. You're there to raise them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, can
Do
we
you,
talk about our God? Seems like she
do,
has an issue. I
could
think she
I
has an issue.
could
Yeah.
could I add a point?
Yeah.
So in one of my favorite books, The Four Agreements, and I'm reading The Master of Self right now. I'm doing a bunch of videos on it. one of the two agreements that I love the most are don't make assumptions and don't
Yeah.
take things personally.
Yeah.
And one of the things I learned about, especially when it comes to religion, when
Mm-hmm.
you see someone make a point that they were only able to unconditionally love or learn to love once they got into a relationship with God, you have to understand that that's the base condition by which they now know how to love. So for most people, it is an end-to-end condition by which they can actually share love. So it actually has nothing to do with any of us. It actually has everything to do with the only way that they can actually like live with themselves, like who
Yeah.
they really believe they are. And so it was tough for me for a long time because a lot of people did sort of mistreat me for different reasons. But
Yeah.
like the number one thing I've recognized is for most people, the when they are unable to love someone or when they're mistreating someone because of a belief or an idea that they have, it's because they themselves do not have the ability to actually love themselves unless they maintain this belief or idea. And it
Yeah.
is pretty tough, right? Like that's why I'm saying that most people use unconditional love to control because I wouldn't be surprised if like I heard you say that at certain points they said, "We love you so much, we just want what's best for you, and that's why we are telling you that you have to do this because this is the only way to live." Like
Yeah.
again, that's them using the unconditional love to try to control you to do the thing that they see is in their perspective the only way to live, which it's okay, right? Like that's just all they're able to do. And
Yeah.
for everyone, it's different, you know?
Yeah, and like I was raised religious, like in a religious home. So it's not like I wasn't around it.
Hmm.
But I don't believe in God. I don't want anyone to shove it down my throat anymore. It's a turn off. Honestly, if Christians really were true Christians, they wouldn't push it down people's throats. They would actually lead by action and lead by love instead of judging. And that's what my
Hmm.
parents did to me, especially my biological parents. So I do have a problem with people who
Hmm.
say that, oh yeah, we're good people because we're Christians. Bullshit, that doesn't say shit about you. I'm sorry, that sounds very aggressive. But
Yeah.
just because it's a title doesn't make you a good person automatically. I've met so many great people who like are not believers in Christ. They believe in like treating people with respect
Hmm.
and kindness.
And,
Um
and I can agree with that. I think the thing that can help us have healing in these
mhm.
cases and maybe not feel the negativity towards those
Yeah.
people and the mistakes
Yeah.
they've made is recognizing that the responses that people give us, whether Christian or Muslim or non-denominational or atheist or whatever, isn't necessarily a
Mhm.
reflection of the beliefs themselves as much as about the belief in the idea as much as a belief about themselves.
Oh
And the
yeah.
way that any
Mhm.
person individually treats you
Yeah.
isn't a reflection of anything other than how they would treat themselves if they were making the decisions that you're making, if
Oh
that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, no, that does make sense. I mean, I guess mine just comes from a deeper rooted issue, especially in the church, where a lot of people say they try to act like they're better than you, they know God better than you, they're
Hmm.
better than you because you don't know God. I just don't appreciate it or the disrespect. And those people tend to make others feel like they're less than and not appreciated. And that's just how most of parental figures had made me feel.
I understand
Um,
that.
so it hits a
100%.
deep wound, and
Hmm.
a lot of people can testify to that feeling. A lot
Hmm.
of people. I personally don't believe in fairy tales. I believe in science. I am so sorry if it offends anyone, but those are my beliefs.
I can
Um,
understand that.
yeah, so it just comes from that. Just I've been controlled with religion all my life, and I just don't appreciate it. It's like people are allowed to have their own voice, their freedom. Just because you adopted them or gave birth to them doesn't mean they owe you anything. Your
Right.
job is to raise them, learn, basically teach them the ropes of life to be independent and be successful in life. Nothing more than that. They're not there
Right.
to owe you anything in the future.
And I
Uh,
and I do think like one of my favorite things to say, and then I want to make sure we keep moving. I want to hear medium rare
yeah.
next. I believe it like personally, that every time that something has ever struck a nerve in my heart or made me feel like it was a wound, before I used to think it was, a rough situation, but now I actually view it as the potential for me to learn something new about myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really thankful to the people who did love me conditionally and did try to sort of force certain ideas on me because it's a reminder that I never want to be that person and that I'm more
Yeah.
aware of the fact that that is a possibility and that I could make that mistake if I confuse my beliefs with truth over understanding what if I really do believe something is true, then I would actually give someone the space to communicate with me so that I could maybe help them understand my perspective or maybe even change my
Yeah.
perspective. And so for that, I'm thankful to all those different relationships and things that happened throughout my life.
I love that. I am glad you shared that. I think that's a very beautiful way to look at it.
Hmm.
And
I'll send
I
you the book that
no,
I read about that.
that'd be awesome. One more thing I want to add, since I know you still want to keep going, but
Uh-huh.
I will say that just in general, like I have tried to like voice about like my opinions when it comes to that, but
Hmm.
immediately I just get like shut down like
Hmm.
by my mom, and basically any kind of opinion I have, she just doesn't like it. Any
Hmm.
boundary I try to set, she doesn't like it. So I mean, I guess she always thinks she's right no matter what, or the highway. It's kind of like that with her.
Hmm.
So I've just had to take it upon my own self and just, be my own person,
Hmm.
be around like-minded individuals, people who will respect your viewpoint and not push things.
Yeah, I
Uh,
understand that. I
so
think you do have to create the space. And
yeah,
if someone isn't willing to respect you at all and hear
hmm,
you out, but still wants to make the point of, I'm right, but I don't want to hear your perspective, then you
yeah,
do have to create some space. And I understand that 100%. Thank you so much, though. I mean,
no,
genuinely, thank you for sharing your story and being like open and vulnerable about it.
no problem. Thank you so much, Django. I think that's your name, right?
It is. I'll shoot you a message with the book, all right?
Awesome. Thank you.
Alrighty. Medium rare. Thank you for being patient. Is this your first time here?
It's Jenny.
Oh, Jenny?
Yeah,
It's Jenny Jenny?
Jenny.
Jenny! Oh my gosh, you are so amazing, incredible, fabulous, fantastic, sensational. I had no idea you had another page. What's going on?
Yeah, it's my backup because,
Oh
I'm
yeah, I know,
spicy.
I know, I know
So
you are
things
spicy.
happen.
What's going
Um,
on?
Nothing. I did want to say and touch
Hmm.
on when you said you felt language,
Hmm.
the communication it's a conspiracy theory, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And can you elaborate one more time again, refresh me why you said that?
Yeah, so basically, for instance, when I say unconditional love, everyone has an idea of what unconditional love is. And so if I made each of us describe what it means to us, we would all describe something different. And so really what we have is language is a way for us to try to share our experience, but there's no real way to know if we actually do share our experience with each other unless we really go in deep and describe what's going on. And so, like, we may come to an agreement of what unconditional love is, that, and someone else may have a completely different belief about it. And that's how all of the language works, right? Like,
Right.
there are words in each generation that mean different things. And so, does it actually mean that, or does it only mean it if I'm able to share that idea with someone else? And that's where I get to the point of where I take a step back and I say, if we're saying something and the action out of it seems to not be that, is it possible that we don't actually know what we mean by those words? And that's where I kind of come to the idea that maybe when people are saying they unconditionally love each other in our culture, they maybe have never experienced unconditional love, so they're not really describing what we actually mean by it. And that gives us the space to not take the words too serious. It means that like maybe we could relearn something new or realize that we don't actually mean what we say in some capacities.
I do respect that. I do appreciate that. That's spot on. I agree with that 110%. And it reminded me of a quote by Bruce Lee,
Hmm.
who said, what did he say? He said, I'm drawing a blank. He said, words are energy. That's what he said. Words are
Hmm. Hmm.
energy and
Hmm.
they cast spells. And that's why it's called spelling, because
Yeah.
we all have our own perception of what a word even entails or
Hmm.
means to another person.
Hmm.
So I just really, truly respect that, um, that reference point that you just made because it really resonates. So that's all.
Thank you so much. And again, like one of the ways that I've started to recognize this is people fall in love all the time. And I consistently hear people then say later on, and like, let's be honest, the majority of relationships, and this isn't just marriages, just like the majority of relationships you'll be in aren't going to work out throughout your entire life, right? Like dating or whatever. And people get to a point where most times they say, I thought you loved me. And when they're saying that, they're describing that when you said you love me, I had a belief of what that meant. And then
Hmm.
you didn't meet that expectation. But the
Hmm.
point is like when you say you love someone, what do you really mean? And a lot of times we think that we all agree on what the meaning of words are. And so we don't actually take time to try to understand that. I mean, English as a language is really elementary. We use
Hmm.
love, and it just means like 6 trillion things.
Hmm.
But we all think that we're all in agreement. So if we all come from the perspective of, hey, what if language is a conspiracy theory? Then that means that we need to get on the same page on the conspiracy theory when we decide to take the time to say, I love you, so that I don't have a misconception on the belief and I show up in the way that you might want me to show up, and then you show up in the way that I might want you to show up. Or we agree that we can't show up for each other and we just decide to go our separate ways.
So why do you today choose to say that you unconditionally love yourself and everybody else if it's a conspiracy theory?
Well, I say that, and when I say it, what I'm describing specifically is I give both myself and everyone around me the space to try to explain uh, what they what they believe. And if I don't understand it, I'll do my best to try to understand it. And if I can't understand it, I'll accept it. So, for instance, when I say it's really difficult for me to work out, I actually take the space to ask myself, why is it so difficult? I don't just leave it there. I go, why is it hard for me to wake up and work out if I really want to lose weight? What is it that makes it difficult for me? And I try to get all the way down in it with myself to understand, like, maybe I don't have to accept that thing is true. If someone else were to come to me and say, like, hey, Django, I'm having a hard time with X, I ask why. Like, I want to know. I don't go, oh, that's stupid, or, you should get over it, or you're supposed to be living your life in a certain way. I care to understand you, and if I can't understand you, I will accept you. And that's just the end of it. Everyone. It doesn't matter to me. So that's how I describe unconditional love.
That's
Like,
that's your perception, and that's how you
hmm
perceive it. So it
yeah.
again, it kind of negates anybody's point or value
It
of what it is.
negates it. So let me actually backtrack. And then femininity, you're up next. I do want to hear what you have to say. So here's my point. Language at the end of the day only has the meaning that you and I share. So because I believe that the words only make sense when you and I share it, I take time to really try to understand your perspective because I recognize that you're a completely different entity from me and I don't know what these words might mean to you. And so in those moments where we actually do learn and try to share that moment, I'm really learning more about myself because I can really only understand more about myself from how I accept and understand you. And so it doesn't matter to me what the grand word is, what the US says it means, what the world says it means. In each interaction, I'm viewing it as just like the most amazing, incredible moment that I could have with you, no matter who you are. Like, I want to understand you and I want to accept you. It doesn't negate the fact that after this conversation, everything we said could technically all fall apart. And technically, if you cease to exist, it's almost like that conversation never happened. But I can enjoy that moment in time with you.
Well, I could unconditionally love you for that, and that's why love is a universal dream.
Oh,
And you're the
sensational.
best.
Hey, you're the best too. Thank you
Bye.
so much. Femininity. Am I saying it
Hello,
right? Hey, how are you? Femininity heals. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Sensational. Is this your first time here?
It is.
Gotta get a clap. Could have been anywhere but so sweet. You know what? I say that, and every time I say it, I'm like, gotta give the claps. Bro, chill. That sounds absolutely ridiculous. But it is the claps, and I love you guys so much, and I'm so thankful for you choosing to be here. What do you want to add to this?
First things first, I must say this
Mhm.
because you just came right on time. I'm literally doing my nails and
Okay.
just flipping through TikTok. And I've really, been on the spiritual side of TikTok, but of course, you click on certain things and you get that algorithm going.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to say that just listening to your voice and listening to your crowd and reading through the comments, it's just totally refreshing. And I definitely feel like I've found a new connection. So
Oh, well, thank you so
I
much.
just wanted to say that first.
Oh, thank you. That really means a
Um,
lot.
sure. I mean, specifically, I haven't been here very long. I've
Mm-hmm.
only been here for a few minutes, but
Mm-hmm.
I do want to add one thing that I really learned more recently
Mm-hmm.
about unconditional love. It had a lot to do with the teachings of Abraham Hicks,
Mm-hmm.
and I just never heard this meaning before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically being able to accept people for where they are
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily have to agree. You don't have to come to even a pure understanding,
Mm-hmm.
but just having acceptance to know that this is where they are in their journey at this particular moment,
Mm-hmm.
and appreciating the fact that they are open and honest enough to stand by what they believe at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing them to have different perspectives, thoughts, beliefs as you, without having any animosity or um, any unresolved tension underneath. It's not being flippant and just being like, okay, well, if that's what you believe, if you like it, I love it. It is a genuine understanding of, this is where they are in their journey. This is something that I'm not going to push. I know that I've had beliefs in certain things that I have now outgrown or evolved from.
Mm-hmm.
So really having true acceptance. So that's one thing that I really come to learn, and it really enhanced every single relationship, including the relationship with myself. It enhanced it 10 times fold, because I I remind myself constantly, because I still have that human ick, but I remind myself constantly that I just need to allow them to be who they are genuinely, to breathe through those old nudges and habits that I've had in the past, to not need to know why to get more understanding, but need to know more why, so that I could find a way to turn them around. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I just find that acceptance, like true acceptance, not just flip it, okay, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but true acceptance as, just because you believe or you behave a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that you are innately a bad person. You're just in this spin right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, to add on to what you're saying, and I absolutely love it. Also, just as a side note, you hit 7,000 like I told you guys, you're amazing, you're incredible, you're fabulous, you're fantastic, you're sensational, you're divine, you're immaculate. Courtney, we're so happy to have you here. I love you all very much. But the one thing I want to add to this is, when we think about the words that we use and the beliefs that we have, we're always referencing something in the past. And it is very real for you because it is real. But like, ask yourself, for instance, when you think someone's being disrespectful, what is it about the past that reminds you of that disrespect? And what is it about this person that is making you feel this way? And like, are you just going to, for instance, believe that that's the case because you just believe based on the past that that's what that means? Or do you really want to get to understand that person and maybe even be able to accept them for the way that they, communicate? Like, for all of the ideas and things that we have in our lives, I think people don't realize that when they're looking at someone else and they're feeling something about that person, it's actually a reflection of something in their past that they've accepted to be true in their life, in our lives. Because it's only true in our head unless we actually ask, right? So, for instance, disrespect I think is a big one in like Western culture at least. Everybody has their own idea of what disrespect is. And most of us aren't really willing to ask and find out whether or not that person's being disrespectful, as much as we'll just say, hey, we believe that this person meant disrespect by that. And we're not really willing to find out why we feel like that's disrespect or try to remember who taught us that that was disrespect. We just go along the lines of what it is that we believe. But if you do start to recognize that every feeling that you have with someone else is a reflection of your own relationship with yourself, it helps you have more patience for the other person, because now you might want to get to hear that person's perspective, because it's almost like you're having a conversation with yourself, only with a part of yourself you didn't know was there. And like, that's what makes it so easy for me to unconditionally love everyone, because I can just like, it almost just feels like to me when I'm talking to someone that like, it's like I'm getting a chance to talk to a part of myself I didn't know was in there. And that just makes every interaction just like incredible. Like, it's beyond incredible the way that I'm able to communicate with people. Does that make sense, femininity?
Totally, and so profound, exactly what you said, because there's two things that comes up for me when you mention earlier
Mm-hmm.
about basically us being mirrors and
Mm-hmm.
attracting certain parts of people to us, whether it's good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that is part of our shadow that we have yet to identify with and deal with or accept within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very easy to jump to conclusions about someone's behavior or something that they said or whatever the case may be, because the meaning of that initially comes from our past experience. And so if that's something that we haven't dealt with within ourselves, then that's going to be a trigger for us, and we're going to see it
Mm-hmm.
as an assault. And what you mentioned, which was so profound, was that you see it as an opportunity to speak to a part of yourself that you did not recognize was there. And
Right.
that is a very evolved way of being able to see the world and attach to, be able to connect with the human condition. The
Mm-hmm.
other piece that I must say about this
Mm-hmm.
that's come up so many times is that I truly have this really deep belief that we are meant to heal through each other, meaning that a lot of times when, especially just as an example, a lot of times when we have very difficult breakups, things that are very traumatic for us, losses in life, we really feel that isolation is the best medicine, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how we are going to heal. And what they don't understand, what most don't understand, is that healing is not avoidance. Healing is connection. So whatever it is, if you've suffered a loss of someone, the best thing would be for you to be around others that you appreciate and that appreciate you and love, not for you to be alone for, months, weeks at a time, trying to resolve something, because without the mirror of other human beings in front of us to reflect parts of us that we can't yet see or grasp, parts of our shadows that we can't or we haven't been able to accept or understand yet, without that reflection, it is nearly impossible to be able to truly feel and release and go through the different grieving times or whatever emotions that we need to release,
Mm-hmm.
because all we are seeing is our reflection. We're
Mm-hmm.
not being able to see other people and how we're reflected through their eyes. So I think that it's just important to know, because it just touched on something that means so much to me. What I try to really tell people all the time is that healing alone is not a thing. That is called avoidance. Because when you get back out into the world and you start interacting with people, the shadow within them, within yourself, is going to be reflected straight back at you, and you're going to freak out, and you're going to think, I thought I healed from this. No, you're just starting. You needed other human beings in order to get the healing done.
I like that. And also to even add on to that, one of my favorite things that is a baseline, and Prophetess, thank you so much for being so patient. I'm going to get you in a minute. I want to just add one thing. One of the things that I hold pretty close is this idea I read a while ago, and it's now just like a baseline to how I feel. The thing that I read was, if God is omniscient, all powerful, all knowing, and has the ability to experience everything all at once, what is the one thing that God lacks? Do you know?
I'm curious. I do not.
It's limits. So like it basically makes the point that to be all powerful and omniscient means that you don't actually have any limits. But that would mean that you have no way of actually experiencing anything, because you would technically be the very experience itself. So what would be more special than to impart the ability of the experience, but limit the individual to one perspective instead of having all of them? Well, then you would be able to simultaneously have all perspectives being experienced at once. Only the reason that everyone is able to experience those experiences is because they're limited. And that would be the greatest gift to give everyone, and also in a way to yourself as you are the experiencer. So like in a way, if we are in a conversation with someone in a conversation with a different culture, in a conversation with anything, we are experiencing ourselves because all of us are a part of the thing that is all things. And I just like thought to myself, like, that is a really amazing way to think about life, that God imparted a piece of us to actually be able to experience the experience. And so really every time we feel like we're experiencing this sadness or happiness or joy or fear or whatever, it's just a part of the total experience. And we all are only able to experience that because we have limits on ourselves individually. And so it's you have the opportunity to think like, hey, this is good or this is bad, but the good and bad is all based on your experience, and you get the right to experience that in this life. And if that's how you feel about it, there's really nothing to be afraid of per se, because you realize
Yes.
that it's all just the experience for the experience. And I have like an amazing time sort of accepting that as like a precursor to life. I enjoy
Mm,
it a lot, you know,
mm-hmm.
because it makes everyone really
Wonderful.
special, you know? It's like, oh, wow, I'm getting to experience myself through you. Like, this is amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, like I don't agree with you. Let me learn more about you. What could I learn more about myself that I don't already
Mm-hmm.
know, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. What just
It
real
is a
quick,
lot of fun.
what color are you painting your nails?
I'm gonna do a natural this time, but
Sure.
I'm gonna do some gold flakes
Okay.
in
Bringing the heat.
there, make it a little fancy.
Do your thing. Thank you so much for coming in and being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm definitely gonna just stalk you now.
Okay, check out the vids.
Will
Thank you
do.
again. Prophetess, thank you for being patient. You are so amazing. What do you have for me?
Peace, 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 everybody. So I don't quite know because I'm not into monologuing, like you
Hmm.
know what I'm saying. So
Hmm.
it's more of like a conversation. I thought we were all gonna be, then I saw everybody starting to drop. I'm like, shit. Well, I guess I don't know what to to you
Well,
know
we
what
can
I'm
chat it
saying.
up. No, for
So
sure. It's all dependent upon each
yeah.
person. What did you wanna? What? How do you want to share? What's your thoughts?
Well, you've been talking about unconditional love a lot. Like I comment a lot on your videos
Hmm.
because, you be having a interesting perspective.
Hmm.
And I usually agree with you,
Hmm.
but I think it was that last video that you just put.
Hmm.
Um, I can't remember, but even when you were just saying that about your dad,
Uh-huh.
and you were saying that you didn't feel like he loved you in that
Hmm.
moment,
Hmm.
isn't that what you said? I don't want to
Yeah,
forget.
it is. It is what I felt as a kid.
Okay, as a kid. Okay,
Right. Right.
so
Right.
yes, so I can see how that happens then because children have their own perspective of things.
Hmm.
They internalize things differently. Of course, that's
Hmm.
why there's childhood trauma.
Hmm.
So yeah, so there's but with unconditional love, like I guess I'll just talk about what your caption says there.
Hmm.
You know how most use unconditional love to control others' perspectives, and I definitely can't deny that because people manipulate with their emotions constantly.
Hmm.
And this is why I always teach people to be able to stand 10 toes down on who they are. Figure out what it is within you. Because, like you said, I always say everybody's a divine mirror reflection
Hmm.
of you. We love to hear people say, nobody's in charge of my happiness. Nobody controls my happiness. But when I tell your ass nobody controls that anger or that depression or that frustration, like, no,
Hmm.
that's that person's fault. You know what I'm saying? So I
Hmm.
think understanding that even when you're angry or you're frustrated or you're upset, nobody controls that either. So
Hmm.
allowing other people to have their own perspective, and I know I might be all over the place, but because I keep getting downloads about certain things,
Hmm. Hmm.
so I hope y'all can follow me.
Hmm.
But I think when people hear the word unconditional love, it kind of means like you get to do whatever you want to do to me type
Hmm.
thing. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And that's definitely not what unconditional love is to me.
Hmm.
Okay? Because unconditional love to me is me standing up for myself. No is a whole sentence.
Hmm.
Okay? I'll tell you no real quick. Right?
Hmm.
If that is something that I feel like I need to do to set my boundaries, you
Hmm.
know, unconditional love to me is being able to, like you said, see that person for who they are and allowing them to be who they are, not
Hmm.
attempting to want them to fit into my paradigm.
Hmm.
Not I don't need them to act a certain way for me to say that I love you. Now, does that mean they have access to me?
Hmm.
Does that mean that I interact with them always or I always allow them to be in my space? No, I get to control that. That's me.
Could I add?
Go
Could I
ahead,
add something?
please.
So here's the thing for me about unconditional love. Like Everything that we do is a tool set to help someone understand our perspective. Like every word that we use, whether we like it or not, is a tool that we've learned to communicate our perspective and hopefully more and more effectively. That's why like a language like Japanese does a great job of leaving out minutia because for instance they have like 25 words for love and they have words that describe things that we don't even have in our language in English, right? Does that make sense, Prophetess?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So when I what I mean by that now to take it to the next step is, for instance, with my father, who again I love infinitely. There is no problems between us. When I was a child and I didn't do well with my grades, we didn't normally have deep conversation about what it was that was going on that led me to not live up to the expectation that he believed I had the potential to do. We had a conversation about how I was going to be disciplined for making that mistake. And if I didn't accept the ideas, there were different tools that he knew to use. And I think a lot of those tools were tools that he learned from his parents. And at the end of the day, when he looks back at his life, because he's happy where he is, he feels like the methods that his parents used will be effective with me. So he's just using the tools he knows how to use to get the experience out of me that he wants. And it's not that he's doing anything wrong. He's just
I
doing
agree.
with the tools that he has. So my point is that when as a child you're crying and you're hurt and you're sad and you say, I don't understand why you're treating me like this. This is when parents oftentimes go with the concept of one day you'll understand because this is the way that is going to get you to have the experience in life that I believe is best for you. And my point is not that this is right or wrong. My point is that it's a tool set to get the child to understand that it's okay to do the things that they're doing because they believe that the ends will justify the means. My point about that is that real unconditional love would be when someone does something that doesn't necessarily meet your expectation, instead of using the tools of yelling or anger or discipline or whatever the case is to actually sit down and try to have a real conversation to understand why they didn't meet that expectation. And we can extend that even beyond children, like in a relationship. If my wife comes home and says, hey, I don't want to be with you anymore, instead of jumping to my tool sets of anger and frustration and yelling and screaming and trying to convince the person to not do that, maybe I could try to use the tools of understanding to try to meet them where they are and understand their perspective to find out how maybe I can either shift my life or do things differently. And that's all that's just why I'm saying that when you oftentimes hear someone describe love in a conversation with someone, what we're normally doing is saying, I love you because I would like to hear an I love you back, or I'm expecting a certain behavior back, which is why a lot of times people will be like, well, I said I love you. Why didn't you say it back? Or, normally you kiss me on my forehead or whatever the case is, right? You're expecting something back. Or you say, I love you enough that I'm doing this thing for you. And this is for you. But rarely do we say, I love you. And like, that's it. I just want you to know how much I love you. That I want to understand you. I don't need anything back from you. To me, that's unconditional love. Um, and again, no, that doesn't mean unconditional boundaries. If you come to me and you say, hey,
Right.
Django, I know you said you unconditionally love me. I need $1. I want you to give me $1 right now. If my response is, I don't have that dollar to give, could you explain to me what you need the dollar for to see if I can help you in another way? That's me showing unconditional love. If your response is, I want you to go into a bad place to prove your love for me, well, that's you attempting to manipulate me to get what you want, even if it doesn't necessarily come, even if it means my detriment. And to me, that just means that you don't unconditionally love me. And I don't have to do anything. I'm just working to try to understand you, you know? So it's like, hey, Django, I need $10. Why do you need $10? Well, I'm hungry and I need to eat something. Well, that's cool. I don't have $10 to give, but I can make you food right now. Well, I don't want that. Oh, well, okay. Well, then, I mean, I can't help you with the food thing. Well, if you love me, you would give me the $10. Like, what about that is like it's like now you're trying to get me to prove that I am what you say I am, and that's fitting within your bounds. But I'm just attempting to give with what I can give with. And like that's where I'm trying to communicate to people the separation between what I think unconditional love and like love in relationships has become, as opposed to like what I think it could be. And that is, for most people, they're looking for a relationship where they can make sure that they get what they want out of another individual. And I think that's why a lot of those relationships kind of end pretty unhealthily. And
Yeah.
instead, it's like we're in this together to try to understand each other and show up for each other how we need each other. And if we can't, hey, it's okay. Like maybe you need to go get this from someone else or whatever the case is. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, and I just want to, because you be saying like so much, I be wanting to, I don't be wanting to interrupt
You
you
can
though.
jump in at any time.
You know what I'm saying? But
Huh?
when it comes to like relationships and things like that, like I always tell people like I'm gonna be you. I'm like blink, blink, stare, stare. You know, because you're gonna be looking at me. That's why I say like it's not about coming for half and half. I'm not looking for somebody to complete me. You come 100% to the relationship. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? So I'm not looking for another person to validate my feelings.
Hmm.
So whenever, like I said before, you're not in control of me being angry. Even if you pissed me off,
Hmm.
okay, it's my job to go within and be like, you know what? There is something what made me mad about this whole situation, because nothing should be able to disturb my peace.
Hmm.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And so when I figure out whatever it is, because maybe somebody used to take advantage of me and that triggered me. Maybe
Hmm.
this is how my dad used to talk about me and that triggered me. That made me mad. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? So, and then once I get a hold of what I am feeling, and then we can come together and communicate.
Hmm.
And that's what I wanted to say. Effective communication is a hell of a thing, even when it
Hmm.
comes to your children, right?
Hmm.
And I think this is why it's so imperative that we as parents begin to you know do what I say. Children should be heard, seen, not heard, type shit. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? How our parents used to say that. You
Hmm.
sit there and you be quiet, you don't say nothing, you just be seen.
Hmm.
So children are little humans. They have
Hmm.
feelings, emotions. They also have dreams. Are living our childhood dreams
Hmm.
to this day. Dreams that we had in childhood. That we had to fight through those traumas. And we always talk about breaking generational curses, or I like to call them cycles.
Hmm.
We always talking about generational cycles. But go ahead. I see. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel I just want to make a point about this. For the majority of human like interaction, especially in the West, things have been life or death situations. So we just did stuff because like it helped, right? Like marriage as a original idea was a way to, as a father, guarantee your daughter was going to be okay, as like a husband to guarantee that you're going to have kids, and that, like there were all these ideas that were steeped in survival, not steeped in what is it that I want, what is it that I like. It was steeped in survival. So now we actually have the opportunity to choose to be in relationships that we want. And I think a lot of times what that turns into is like a fight for control. And then it becomes a transactional process. Like the reason I think for instance, the like red pill stuff works really well for men is that it makes an argument for a transaction that you at least understand. I think for most people when they get married, like they don't really know what the transaction is that they've chosen to get into with the person. They normally don't find out what that is until sort of like after the fact. And then people are like, "Well, I thought you were going to be like this and you don't do this anymore and you said you were going to be like this," and it turns into this whole thing. My point about all of this, and I've even made this point about relationships and past ones, is that if you can learn to unconditionally love someone, then the paradox of anxiety comes up, which is like a lot of people are anxious that their significant other would leave them at some point if they didn't do things the right way or if they don't show up in a certain way. But if you're willing to say, I'm willing to let you go if I can't be the thing that you want me to be, in some ways you now actually create the space where people can actually sit down and communicate as they evolve and change into the person that they are. And I think for a lot of people, they would end up not leaving each other because they would actually feel like they're in a safe space to actually get the things that they need from the other person. Because if you both unconditionally love each other, you would be able to sit down and just be like,
I
oh
agree.
man, like you're making so much sense. Oh wow, you're right. I haven't shown up in this way. I can do that more. Oh, you really need to take some time away? For sure, I'm here for you. Instead, in most cases, what I see And what has even been the case in my own relationships is that people are afraid that they're going to lose the person who they love. And so in turn, they're not willing to communicate how they feel. And then animosity grows. And then sometimes people make decisions on their own. And then it turns into this whole thing and a big blow up. And now everyone feels unaccepted. And then now you can't even, you're not even in a good spot in
Yes.
any capacity. So I just make the point of if we could learn to be open and transparent because I'm willing to give my love unconditionally, even if you're not willing to, that actually allows for me to build healthy boundaries. And then instead of me becoming um, angry with you or what's
Hmm.
the right word for this? Like vengeful. I
Hmm.
instead know that I communicated my needs. And if you said, absolutely not, I can't do this under any capacity, then like we can make decisions from that. Instead of it being like, I made a decision because I felt like you weren't doing something, but I didn't communicate it to you because someone else did it for me. And so now we're
Yes,
fighting
expecting people
because
to be
like
mind
nothing,
readers.
right,
Sorry.
expect people to be mind readers. No, you're right. You can jump in anytime. But yeah, that's just how like we the Paradox is one of my favorite books in Alan Watts. It's called The Wisdom of Insecurity. The point he makes is that the more you the more that you hold on to something, the more anxious you actually become. So if what you want is to be secure in your relationship and you're fighting to get the security, you're always going to grow more anxious in that because you're fighting to keep that thing. It's like trying to keep your breath by holding it. You have to breathe in order to get oxygen. The second that you try to hold on to the oxygen because you're afraid to let it go is the moment that you then could actually lose your life because you refuse to let go of the breath. He basically says the same thing happens. You're holding on so tightly to a relationship that you're afraid to lose it, that then you're not giving the person the space to decide that they want to go or decide that they want to change things. And in turn, like you can actually let go of the anxiety because now you're actually being open
Yeah.
and transparent, all those other things.
I want to jump in right quick when you say that right there,
Mm-hmm.
because if you are trying to hoard anything, because I promise you, if you're trying to hoard that relationship, that ain't the only thing you're hoarding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it don't just stop there. Don't just start there. So, but if you are attempting to hold on to that relationship, then there is something that's within inside of you that you feel out of control of, and so you are now beginning to try to control the things that are on the outside of you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why, and accountability. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go back to that. When you were talking about in relationships, and most of the time people don't want to admit that they're wrong, or don't
Mm-hmm.
want to not even wrong, to admit that they could do things better. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? But if you are in a person, and you got to be, if the person that you want, you got to be that person. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want somebody to understand you, then you have to be able and willing to understand other people. You
Mm-hmm.
understand what I'm saying? So if you want other people to take accountability and about how you feel, then you
Mm-hmm.
have to start taking accountability for how you
Mm-hmm.
feel.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I
but
agree with
um
that.
but yeah, go ahead.
I'm with you
Hey, Mr.
100%.
Print. I don't want to
Mr.
take up
Brent. You,
all the time. You
no,
can.
you're never taking up all the time. Mr. Brent, what did you want to add?
I just wanted to add, nah.
Nah, you're not feeling it?
I think that the question is always cleverly worded as you do things, and people read it and come to an instant idea.
Uh-huh.
And I always, from watching you enough, I know there's always something moving underneath
Uh,
the topic.
well, what do you think is moving underneath the topic? Tell the people what you think it maybe is what I'm maybe saying that I'm not saying.
I think that if someone is using unconditional love to control others' perspective,
Hmm.
that it's not actually unconditional love.
This is true. I can agree.
In my opinion, uh, control is literally a polar opposite to unconditional in this sense.
Hmm.
Because for me, if I were to love someone unconditionally,
Hmm.
then I can't say that I should be able to control their actions. I'm willing to
Hmm.
accept those actions.
Yeah.
Now, I think that you've talked about this a lot, and I think that actually having unconditional love is a very difficult feat to accomplish for a lot of people. We think they get close, but everybody's got a point where they say enough's enough, you know?
Hmm.
And so I just think that if someone is using love to try to control others,
Hmm.
it therefore has conditions. Because
Hmm.
as soon as you step out of that control, you've stepped out of the unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the purpose of the love, is to exercise control.
Mm-hmm.
So, in
I
my
could
opinion,
understand that.
it's the condition is the control. So I think that it's a interesting question, but I feel like that's what you're ultimately going to allude to, is that the control problem, how it fights against the unconditional problem.
Right. I think the thing I'm actually making a point of is we can use a word and paradoxically be describing that word, be doing the exact opposite of what we're describing is what I mean by that. So like I don't think the majority of people in the Western world have ever experienced what would be true unconditional love, because I don't think most people in the Western world understand anything other than the transactional nature of like our relationship with even language. Like we from from the moment that the majority of people are born, their parents are looking to mold them into what they believe is the model citizen, the model Christian, the model whatever it is. Like right, they want the little version of who they are, and in most cases aren't really willing to accept their beliefs or their ideas that are outside of that concept. And on top of that, don't even want to hear the ideas that that person has. By definition, if you're not even willing to sit down and hear someone out, in my mind, the thought is conditional, right? If you come to me with, hey, this is this new part of my perspective, and your response is, shut it down, get rid of it, don't ever bring it up in this household again, in a way, you've set the conditions by which I'm willing to accept you, because I only accept you if you are what I believe is my child. And so, in turn, like, then you get older, and then now it's your turn to try to mold your child in the way that you believe they should be. And then I think we do a lot of the same thing in our relationships. Hey, if we're going to get married, I expect all these things from you. And then, some people after they get married say, hey, the expectations should change and I'm only okay if you're okay with these things, Like, I think for the most part, when we describe what we believe to be unconditional love, we're not actually describing it at all. We're actually just describing something that we want to use to control the people around us. Because it's a great argument, right? Like, when I would make an argument to my parents, like, for instance, even now, me and my mom had a conversation the other day. And literally, when I said, hey, like, don't you understand my perspective? She said, I love you so much that I just want the best for you. And I'm like, yeah, but like, do you care to hear my perspective? And the truth is, no, she doesn't have any interest. She only wants what she believes is best for me. So she's not treating me like a sentient human being. She's treating me like a like a 6 month old who doesn't know that he pooped his diaper. And so I'm like, Mom, I love you to death, but like you gotta listen, you gotta at least try to hear me out. I'm not the 6 month old anymore. Like I have an idea. And even if we don't agree on it, could you hear me out? Like could you at least try to hear me out? And the truth is for most people, when someone changes up on them and wants to talk about something they don't want to talk about, they're really not willing to hear it out anymore. And I mean, that's okay. At the end of the day, you have the right for that. But that's not unconditional love. And then arguing that you're doing it because you love someone unconditionally is a control tactic. Because now it's like, if only you understood how much I love you, then you would understand why I'm doing what's best for you.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of
One
you
second,
guys,
I'll send
though.
it right to you.
Yeah? What do you think, C Square?
Hey, I'll be
I
right
think
back.
Okay, Mr. Brent. What you
I
got,
I
C
think
Square?
I think a lot of the unconditional love that the other gentleman that was just here was talking about is basically people describing unconditional love as narcissism, or narcissism described as unconditional love,
Mm-hmm.
because they're using it for their own personal gain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I might have lost my train of thought a little bit here.
It's
I'm
all good.
sorry.
Could
I do
I?
believe that unconditional love can exist. I think it's much harder in the society we have built today with
Mm-hmm.
all these expectations. And I see Lauren or Laurel Hunter down there in the comments has been talking about romantic expectations and stuff like that. And I think that really makes it difficult for us to find things because we're trying to put expectations on stuff that we really truly don't know anything about. And then when we
Right.
have experiences, then we build up expectations for the next time we have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we really need to let go of uh, our own perceptions on things and just kind of let things happen the way they work naturally, and then
Mm-hmm.
talk about them with our partners or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that open communication between the two is where we'll find the unconditional love.
I like that. Let me I actually wrote a chapter today for my or yesterday for my book that I from a conversation that I had with someone, and it's like really interesting that how this functions for language. So, if you think about it, the difference between a horse and a unicorn is that we all agree unicorns don't exist, right? C
Yeah.
square. And
Yeah.
so if you saw a horse with a horn on it and you were the only one that saw it, and then you wanted to go tell other people about it, some people may say, "Hey, you have no idea what you're talking about." Other people might say, "It's a mythical creature. What you saw was just a horse with a horn." Like everyone would make the argument of what they believe it is or it isn't based on their perspective. Now, you could get if you and 100 people saw it, then a news crew might show up because all 100 people are all describing the same experience together and making a point of, hey, we all had this experience. My reason for saying it in this way is that our experience is only as real in most cases as what other people have agreed our experience is. And so it gets weird when someone shows up and makes an argument that maybe the experience can be something else if other people just aren't willing to agree to it, especially when it comes to things that aren't physical. So when I make the point of unconditional love, where I say, hey, what if you could learn to accept other people even though you don't agree with them or even understand them in any capacity? Well, in America, at least, we normally don't treat people like that, right? Like, I'll only like you if you like me back. I'll only love you if you give me the love I want. I'll only do for you. What's the transaction that you and I are doing? So the principle of what I'm arguing for, like, doesn't exist culturally for us because everything is transactional. Like my premise is that the transaction is actually happening between me and me, even when I'm loving you unconditionally, because I'm giving myself the ability to love myself in a new way, because I wouldn't be able to find this out about myself unless I had this conversation with you. People are like, doesn't make any sense, and of course it doesn't make any sense because conceptually
Actually,
it doesn't exist in
It
my
makes
mind.
a lot of
it
sense.
does make a lot of sense.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what
It
I mean by
almost
it.
sounds like you're talking a path to peace among humanity.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess you could say that. I,
I,
I understand
I
that.
feel people put stipulations on love, like how much you can give me is based on how much you can love me.
Hmm.
But when you come to somebody honest and open about any situation that you're going through and be honest and say, I can still love you through all that, I think that's where people get caught up is they don't want to be honest on where they're at in love.
Hmm.
Like they don't want to be honest about, okay, I might have this situation or I'm in this situation,
Hmm.
but I'm gonna still love you. If you make a mistake, like a lot of people say, okay, he cheated on me, so I'm gonna freaking leave him because he cheated on me. But if you really love that person and work out through, for example, I'm just using Jay-Z and Beyonce as an example. Just
Hmm.
an example.
Hmm.
He cheated on her, but they worked through why he
Hmm.
did that. And when people work through the why, then it can become unconditional love. It can become like I'm accepting that person for who they are and their mistakes that
Hmm.
they're making and work through the love.
Right. I think another thing I just need to imprint on this. I separate an unconditional love idea from the relationships that we choose to be in. Unconditional love to me starts with yourself and then is extended to everyone. And that just means that I am willing to understand you, and if I don't understand you, I'll accept you. But if I decide to be in a relationship with you, like to date or to get married, we do set expectations around that. But what that means is that as we go through this relationship together, we can communicate openly and effectively about how those expectations shift. My point about what happens in most relationships is the majority of people throughout their life when they're in different types. I mean, not even say the majority, but a lot of people that I've known have been in open relationships and just didn't know it because the person that they were with was sleeping with someone else and just didn't tell them. And either they never found out or they did. The truth is like you would rather not communicate what the actual expectations are in your relationship because you know that person wouldn't want to take time to understand or accept your beliefs. That's what the majority of people do because they know that they're not unconditionally loved. They know that person's not going to sit down and try. They might get their car busted in or they might get their tires slashed or whatever. So they're like, you know what? I'd
So
rather
they're
just
afraid. So
What's that?
they are afraid of the outcome of telling the truth.
Right, but they're not willing to. So then let me say this in a different way. When we get into a relationship with someone, we have an idea of what we believe that relationship means to us. And for many people, they're willing to maintain that relationship in a certain way, even if they're not fulfilling even if they know they're not fulfilling the expectations that they said they would in that relationship. So like for instance, someone, because I've had this happen in my own life. I've had people talk to me about how bad cheating is as they are literally in the midst of having a full-blown relationship with someone else, because what they really care about is like the perception of themselves as being in the relationship with the person, and they don't actually love themselves enough to actually understand why they're making the decisions they're making. They would rather set the conditions for everyone else and not even follow the conditions themselves. That's just how I've just seen a lot of relationships work out. I'm making the point of, if you're actually willing to unconditionally love yourself, you would be able to, for instance, instead of going out and deciding to go sleep with someone else because the person you're with isn't willing to do it, but you're not willing to give that person up, say to that person, hey, you're not showing up in this way that I would like. Can you? And if not, can we figure out what we can do together? But that's unconditional love to me. That's separate from the relationship and the expectations that you have. It's just like actually having the conversations. Mr. Brent, you had your hand up a second ago. What did you want to add?
I wanted to expand on one thing, but add another.
Okay, yeah.
The thing that I'll add is that when we talk about love, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about love, uh, I feel like a lot of us just have this singular idea of what it means,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when I think that love has almost like traits.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a blend of things that happen with the word love, in my opinion. And I think that you kind of pointed to that, for instance, in Japanese, they have 25 different ways to describe love, the love between a father and a son versus a mother and a daughter versus, with love with a grandparent,
They
love with
even
a
have like
grandmother.
they even have a word for love that's like a selfish romantic love as opposed to like an unconditional type of love. Like all the way
Like
down to
lust?
like the minutia we don't even know exists.
You mean like lust?
So,
Yeah, to an extent. What were you gonna say, Mr. Brent?
so with that kind of in the forefront of our thought that love has a lot of different traits, we'll call it, I think that if we're going to get into the unconditional love realm, that one of those traits that love possesses is an inability to keep track of the wrongs committed against it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's why I think unconditional love is a very difficult thing for humans to achieve, because we just have a natural tendency to keep track, keep score, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
of well, this person hurt me in this way, and now I have to feel this way, even when they apologize and come to you, seeking to correct the wrong. It's very difficult for humans to typically forget. We can forgive, but forgetting is a difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas love doesn't keep track of that aspect,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the human mind wants to. That being said, that's just my own idea. I wanted to expand on what I think you're talking about with
Mm-hmm.
demonstrating the quote unquote unconditional love in a relationship is something that I've spoken to, and I don't know if this has fed your idea or if you had this before we've really talked.
Mm-hmm.
That may well be the case. We just could be on the same plane, not know it. But in my relationship with my wife, um, we have nurtured our relationship to the point to where if I do something that that goes against what she thinks is typical for our relationship, or if
Mm-hmm.
I'm exhibiting a behavior that is destructive to what we're building, or even if I'm just irritated and I'm just walking around and I'm snapping and whatever, she can come to me with these grievances, and she can be honest and she can be truthful with these grievances without me feeling the need to deflect and argue about my now hurt feelings, which is an area that I can win because it can't be proven that my feelings aren't hurt. And this is a common mistake in a lot of relationships. Is we hear the criticism and now we deflect to our hurt feelings. And then that's what becomes the conversation instead of the original issue that was brought up.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as we may be hurt, We need to give grace and recognize the strength that it takes for someone who loves you to come forward with something that could potentially hurt you with their voice, and recognize that they're not casting us out as a horrible individual for said trait that we're exhibiting, but instead they're making a declaration of their willingness to say the hurtful thing to protect what we're trying to build with our relationship.
I like that. I also just to add on to what you just said, when you have unconditional love for yourself, truly, if someone comes to you with a conversation to be had based on the expectations that you set, if they say something that strikes a chord with you, you will actually eventually get to a point like where I am now, where I'm pretty excited about the fact that I've found a place where maybe I have an attachment to an idea of who I believe I am or what I want out of life that is that has made it hard for me to accept that maybe I haven't shown up in the way that I wanted to, or that maybe there's a part of me that I haven't completely accepted yet. And in the book Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, it talks about this idea of recognizing that when you feel that pang in your heart, instead of working to become defensive and trying to fight against it, that you would actually start to lean into it, because now this is a part of you that you didn't know was there. Like, I remember I read, even before that book, they said, you've found a subconscious belief for someone when their response is emotional and visceral, because when it becomes emotional and visceral, it's not that they're thinking in that moment, it's that you've now hit a nerve of something that they believe, and it's bringing into question what they believe, and now they're fighting against that to maintain that belief, because that's what's dangerous. I remember when I was growing up, one of my favorite things my parents used to tell me, it was a song we used to sing. It was like, oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. For the Father up above is looking down in love. Put a one in the chat if you ever heard that song, because then it goes ears and all that other stuff. But like, the reason for that is that Christianity knows that if a person spends too much time with a group that's in opposition to that, that group's truths could become that person's truths. Like, that's just the facts. Like,
True.
that's why you
Yeah.
defend it. What
Yeah.
was that, C Square?
That wasn't me.
No, I was
Oh, Shay. Who said something?
I was just saying that's true, like
Oh.
what you're saying. And what was the book you quoted?
Oh,
They're asking about the.
cutting through spiritual materialism.
Okay, I'm gonna try to tag
If
you.
you message me, I'll send it to you. I'll send you
Okay,
the video that I made
okay,
about it. And
okay.
love is everything. Thank you so much for the gifts. And C Square, also feel free to jump in if you wanted to add anything. I know you've been quiet for a little bit there. If you wanted to add
Well,
it, yeah,
I can't. What's the gentleman's name at the top
Mr.
here?
Print.
Mr. Print.
Hmm.
What you were talking about with your wife and how you developed that relationship, my girlfriend and I are doing a very similar thing. And is it not to say that that's a form of unconditional love, knowing that you can work with your partner on the path? Because I think Jordan Peterson said, you might want one thing and you take two steps for that and realize that's not the right thing for you. And then you move away from that and you go to something else. And isn't unconditional if you're working through that process with your partner and helping them with their process?
Um, I don't
I
at
believe
all.
so. Go ahead.
I don't pretend to think that I know what's right for everybody, and I'm willing to admit ignorance in a lot of areas. And my idea of unconditional love could be totally wrong, and you could be absolutely correct in your question. What I will say from my own thoughts is that I won't know until my life is over if I loved my wife unconditionally. I still have a life to live. I still have decisions to make and work to put in. I'd like to think that I can achieve that, but I don't know for sure that I'm going to be able to hold true to these convictions against the test of time. I hope I can. And I hope that you are correct. I hope that I am able to express unconditional love and able to receive it. So I don't really have a yes or no answer for you. I would say that if you feel in your relationship that this spot you have nurtured and created is providing an avenue for unconditional love to exist, my hat's off to you. You're ahead of me essentially in that. So I'd say good luck to you and good job.
Mm. One thing I would just add about that is we can never know if someone else unconditionally loves us. We can only know if we are willing to actually give the space for ourselves and others to make decisions kind of based on what they want. And the point I've made about relationships is for most of us, we're looking for guarantees in our relationship. Like guarantees this person's not going to cheat, guarantees that the person's going to be there in case I need my diapers changed, guaranteed that the person will take care of me or choose me over other things. And we can never know that. Like it's impossible because I'm in this relationship with someone else. But the point I made is that if you can accept the idea that in each moment we are experiencing this experience and each of those moments is really special and let go of the need to control the future, then the anxiety that a lot of us oftentimes have in our relationships and our friendships and other things of what are the guarantees for the future, you can just enjoy the moment with that person. And honestly, that's all I'm trying to do at this point with my life.
I always say, like, I have a page. Like, it's all about the experience with people.
Hmm.
It's you got to embrace the experience. I was just talking to a friend, and she was like, I just started dating somebody, and I'm looking towards the future. And I'm like, just enjoy the experience, enjoy the moment, because sometimes we get so overwhelmed of looking what we can build with that person versus enjoying them in the moment that we have them.
Hmm.
And that's love, enjoying the moment together, enjoying the experiences together, and not try to look past like everything. I think we give ourselves anxiety trying to build up, like we can get a house together, we can do this, versus like, let's just have fun together, just to enjoy life together and
Hmm.
experience each other together.
You know something to add on to that, something I've said to people. When I was engaged before, we got in a couple fights, and one of the things I started to feel was that I was a conduit by which this person was going to be able to achieve their dreams. I started to feel like it wasn't really like a love of me as much as what I might be able to provide for what the person wanted in their life. And I feel like for a lot of people, they've spent their entire life with an idea of what they want a relationship to be like and what they envisioned it to be like. And I think that's why a part of why people fall in love because they're really trying to put the person in the box of the husband, the wife, the boyfriend, the fiance, the girlfriend, the son, the daughter, or the parent that they wanted because they're
It's the fairy
attached.
tale.
Right.
The
Well,
fairy tale.
but they're attached to the expectation that they created.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
thing I keep trying to put on, what I'm trying to help people think about is like, what are the conditions that you've created in life with the idea of the words you have? Because when you say husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, friend, best friend, like there are beliefs that you have that underlie it, even if you're not aware of it. And if you're not aware of it, then you might find yourself at a spot where you're mistreating someone because they're not meeting the expectations that you're attached to. And that's when you start to treat that person like less than you would treat a stranger because you know the expectations you have for a stranger, but the expectations that you have on this person who you say you love, you don't recognize that you're actually willing to withhold your love from them if they don't meet those expectations. I don't think a lot of people are sitting around thinking to themselves, like, I'm going to withhold my love from my husband because he's not doing this thing. I think their thought is, see, he doesn't really love me because if he loved me, he would be doing this, this, and this. He would buy me this ring, or she would do this thing for me every night, or, my child would be listening to me if they were a good kid. And then in turn, they start to try to utilize the tools they know how to use to get the person to fit within the box that they want. And it is, again, we're back to the
Do
control.
you think they use the tools of manipulation to get the person to fit in the box?
Well, it's the only thing that we know how to do. Like, I just want to like you have to understand something that I hold as an underlying belief. There is
Hmm.
nothing that exists to me outside of my experience. Like we can
Hmm.
talk about everyone else's experience and I can talk about all these things hypothetically, but I can't actually experience an experience outside of what I'm personally experiencing. So
I get it.
so what that means though is that if in my experience I believe something needs to be like X, and that is like my belief about, for instance, what a happy home is. I am
Hmm.
going to subconsciously be doing everything within my power for that perspective to be seen. That's why, like, for instance, if someone doesn't want to be seen as broke, They would rather have a car that makes them seem unbroke and then be in $100,000 of debt than to not be in $100,000 of debt and then look broke to people. Because we don't realize often how much it matters to be what we think we are, even if we personally know we're not that, but everyone else knows that we are. Like, that's why I think a lot of people will stay in a loveless relationship, be cheating, be doing all these things and say, oh, I'm doing it for the kids. When in truth, the thing is, I want my kids to view me as what I believe a good father is. And even though I know I'm not being that, I would rather them think it's that than to be honest with what I really am. And again, like, this is like the perspective thing I'm saying. For a lot of us, it matters more the perspective that other people believe I am what I am than for me to
Mhm.
know that I am what I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's yeah. People don't live in their truth all the time. It's the perspective of outside people.
Right. Like our whole culture, the culture of the West is based on the idea of collective truth. And so, like, there are a lot of celebrities who have no money, who look super rich. And the whole premise is, as long as I look super rich, I'll get more stuff that I want. And I don't care about
Mhm.
the fact that I don't have any money. Because it's okay. Like, I'd rather be millions of dollars in debt and file for bankruptcy, but be looking good the whole time. Like, people would rather end their life than have their families find out they lost their job. Like, when the stock market crashed during the Great Depression, people jumped off of buildings instead of going home facing the truth
Their
of what was the
family.
situation.
Yeah.
Because in their minds, what matters more than anything is that I am what I think I am to other people, not that I am what I know I am. And if you can actually love yourself unconditionally, it will matter more to you to be who you believe you are than for it to
Uh,
matter to for others to see that. But again, let's backtrack. So then all of a sudden now we're at this spot. How can I love you unconditionally if I'm hiding who I really am because I'm afraid to put that out? I can't. So if someone pulls up on me and they're saying, like, I don't know, like, you should accept me for being polyamorous or whatever the case is, and I'm trying to be monogamous, but I'm not, then I'm going to judge that person really hard, because if I'm not able to live my authentic truth of what I'm doing, then you definitely can't live your authentic truth of what you're doing that's opposite of what I believe. And that's where I think, like, the hatred starts to come in. Because really, you're not hating that person for their choice of maybe being polyamorous. You're hating yourself for not being able to be the version of yourself that you wish to be. Does that make sense? And
yeah.
Mr. Brent, thanks for being here. It's like
True.
it's just like, again, we can only like I have now gotten to a point where when someone's talking to me, I'm genuinely interested in every idea that anyone has, because I am completely integrated into the idea of what I want to be and what I'm doing. Now, occasionally something comes up and I might find out that I'm not integrated, but the second that comes up, I want to find out why that's the case, and I want to spend time with that person to understand, like, what am I missing? What was I unaware of in myself that's making this feeling come up? And for a lot of people, we don't want to do that. So that's where, like, I know plenty of people right now who are in open relationships that are not willing to let other people find out. But they will catch an attitude with someone else who is in open relationships and open about it, because their thought process is that person can't be doing
I
that from a healthy
I
place because I
totally
can't.
I totally agree because I am in one, and
Yeah.
people like, you're so open about it. You're so, and I'm like, I'm living in my truth. Like, we made an agreement. This is the agreement we made, and we're living in our truth. This is what we agreed to. And we have a timeline on it. It's not
Hmm.
forever, but it's what we live in. And people's like, you're so open about it. You go out, do this and do that. I'm living in my truth while you're hiding your second relationship. Everybody knows and understands the agreement that I have with my
Hmm.
husband, and the how long it's going to stay for. So I live in my
Hmm.
truth, and I try to live in my truth, and I tell people, you live in your truth, you feel better about it versus have to run and hide about it, you
Hmm.
know?
And let me tell you this, because
Yes.
we have 10,000 likes. I love y'all. I think you're amazing, incredible, fabulous, fantastic, sensational, divine, immaculate, passionate, truthfully tantalizing, as Mr. Print loves. The thing I want to add in on this is, like, I'm married to truth and not consistency. And what that means is that I'm willing to come back and make a point that I have changed my mind on what I believed at one point. And for a lot of us, we're married to consistency and we're afraid to be open about a choice that we made in case that choice ends up being wrong, right? Like, Shay Shay, at the end of the day, like you've decided to be in an open relationship. This is outside of the bounds of what most people are willing to do. The reason most people aren't willing to be maybe open about that idea is if that thing doesn't work out, they're worried about the judgment that people will give because, oh, we told you it wasn't going to work out. You're trying to do this whole, not normal behavior and see this is what happens when you do that. Well, at the end of the day, if you did what you believed in doing, you enjoyed every single moment of it, and it didn't work
Mhm.
out maybe the way you thought, you can accept the fact that it didn't work out, but you had a great time.
Totally, totally. Because I lived in an experience that
Hmm.
I gave to myself.
Hmm.
So, people ask me all the time, what if it doesn't work out? What do you don't get? I was like, I don't look towards that. I just look to having fun and what we agreed to.
Hmm.
It's the back. People gonna talk regardless what you do or what you not do. So just do what you love
Hmm.
and enjoy it.
Now, I also come to the conclusion, because this is the point that I make to people. There is something to committing to something long term that does give really positive feedback, right? Like if, for instance, I decide I want to lose weight, it's not going to happen tomorrow. I have to do this over years. So there is something to committing to someone and not necessarily just living for the moment in every moment. But I think you have to become aware of what actually matters to you. I just don't think most people are aware of that, and they're just sort of living on a whim and maybe not willing to be honest with themselves when they are making certain choices because they don't want other people to judge them for those choices. But again,
I,
like it is your life and you should do it. C square, what'd you want to add?
well, I actually have a question for you
Okay, yeah,
because
yeah.
you mentioned something that I've been thinking about a lot recently.
Mm-hmm.
You said you're married to the idea of truth and not married to the idea of consistency.
Mm-hmm.
What for you um, does it take to change your mind or in your opinion? Because I've honestly been contemplating the same thing about myself. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why I changed my mind or
Mm-hmm.
what is the line in the sand that makes me change my mind. So what for you makes you change your mind?
I wrote something about this because this is one of my like favorite things to think back on. The closest way I can describe what happened for me was I remember thinking back, there was a point in my life where Jesus was as real as Santa. And he was as real as Santa because my parents had described both as real. 100%, right? I believed in both end to end. And in some ways, Santa was more tangible to me based on the relationship that I believed I had with Santa. And then one day, my parents told me Santa wasn't real. And I don't think parents realize that, that's that like for a child it was real. Like to you maybe you know it's not real, but like to this child it was real. And for me, I think it sparked a question of what other things have my parents described to me as real that maybe aren't real. Also, like what if they're lying about this? Like they said it was real. Maybe I'm on the naughty list and they're not really willing to be honest with me about what's going on, right? Like at some point though, I was able to conclude that Santa isn't real and I don't believe in Santa anymore. But like why what was the combination uh of seeing something in reality and then like believing that it existed that makes me believe it? Like why do I believe that like a dodo bird existed when I've never seen one and I've never even seen the bones? Well, like enough people have told me that it existed. So I mean, I can get down with that belief. And then if someone tomorrow told me the dodo bird never existed, I mean, it's kind of like when people told me Christopher Columbus landed in America. I believed it for the longest time. He never made it here. So it's like, what would it take for me to be willing to change my mind? I have no idea. But what I do know is when someone comes to me and tells me, Django, I have an idea that I think is better than your idea, I get excited about it. Because, like, maybe they'll explain something that when I hear it, I'll be able to believe it. And, like, that's exciting because I'm married to truth, not consistency. I'm not going to fight you on the idea not be open to the idea that I could be wrong because I could be. How do I know? How many times have I been wrong in my life to now make the argument that I have the objective final truth to life? I can't do that. So does that make sense?
Yes, and it
Yeah.
actually poses one more question, if I
Mm-hmm.
may.
Yeah, yeah.
What if you were presented new information?
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you, like I, would draw on our past experiences and everything to make a decision on that
Right.
new information. Is that initial reaction uh, our opinion on things, or is that something that is that like something we're going to defend? till we're blue in the face, or is that something that we just take as an initial for now and then investigate further?
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
probably
know.
phrasing that terribly.
No, I don't know. Like for instance, seeing the bones of dinosaurs has convinced me that dinosaurs existed at one point. Seeing an alien in a glass in Mexico has not convinced me that that was an alien. Why? I don't know. Like there's scientists saying that the aliens are real. They're saying that it happened, and I don't know if I believe it or not. Like I don't know. Like I don't know what finally helps me unify a belief, but I do know when I believe that belief. And so I guess what I've concluded, this is just my idea on life, is that everything is only separate when it's useful. So we have language for words that allow for us to share our perception with other people. Like we call a differentiation of rain and snow because it means something different for the road conditions, or it means something different for like whether or not I'll decide to go out that day. But both are technically precipitation. They're both true, but what matters is the communication that we have. So again, if someone communicates something to me as a belief, I think it really only matters to the usefulness of my life. And in some cases, I find it useful and I incorporate it, and then other cases I don't. And like, but I'm open to any ideas. I'm not married to any idea because I realize that I could be holding myself back from something potentially out there. For a lot of people, they set the box and they say, this is it. This is what I'm doing. This is what I believe. I'm not leaving. And they're willing to fight for that. So that's okay. I mean, you can do that too, but that's just how does that make sense? That's just how I am.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, for me,
Yeah.
like, if someone presents me with new information and then was like, "Okay, you have to defend this new information that you were just told," I'd be like, "No, I'm not.
Hmm.
I'm not immediately defending something. I got to think about it and process it."
Hmm.
So I was just curious if that was the same for everybody else, or at one point, what, like you said, when you believe it.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out for me, and maybe it's the same for all people, I don't know,
Hmm.
when what is enough evidence that makes people believe one thing over another?
Let me tell you something super crazy. I'm reading a book right now on Audible, and Neurosci guy probably knows about this. We have people who have like some issues in their brain where like the nerves go a little bit crazy. They can get what's called a hemispherectomy, where basically instead of having these like wild seizures, you remove this part of the person's brain to make it so they can like live a normal life, so that like you can drive and stuff, because having random seizures just doesn't work. What they found by doing hemispherectomies is that suddenly there are certain things that become like very real for the person, in which I guess there's one side of our brain that can talk, and one side of our brain um, that like talks to the I'm sorry. There's one side of our brain that can communicate and one side of our brain that can't. When someone has this part of their brain taken out, suddenly there are moments where, for instance, you can write something down, but you can't say it. And what they found is that people who've gotten these sometimes will find out that one side of their brain doesn't believe in God and the other side of their brain does. And so it's like when you're having a thought in your head where you're going back and forth, is it the two sides of your brain fighting itself, or is it that you don't actually know what you believe? And I'm sitting here thinking about this all the time because I'm like, man, I go back and forth on ideas all the time. But a lot of times I'll eventually just stick with something and I'm just like, all right, I can't let this go. That used to happen to me. And I just wonder like if that's actually what goes on. Like if we think
Yeah,
that we're unified, but maybe it's just that the side of our brain that can talk, and since I'm never writing, I never actually get out the part of me that maybe doesn't believe that idea. Like it's kind of crazy. Like I don't know. It's just I don't know. I just think it's kind of crazy. All of it's crazy.
it sounds like you think and process things very similar to the way I do.
Yeah. And
Thank
and
you.
again, you have to be open to the idea that you could be wrong. Um, oh, well, yeah, neurosci guy. I'm sorry, I got to re-listen to it. I just remembered hearing them talk about hemispherectomies about the nerves, but do you know what I'm referencing? Church talks. I saw you ask something and I missed it. What did you ask earlier? Church talks.
I was asking for maybe like a practical application of loving yourself.
Oh yeah, I got you.
With
Here's one. There was a guy recently who lost his job. Didn't tell his family he had lost his job. Got super deep in debt. so took out a like a had a large insurance policy out for himself, and so he ended up deciding to end his life so his family could get the check. Never told anyone about what was going on. No one knew about it, um, and that's basically what ended up happening. If you think about it, he had an idea of who he was. He was a person who was going to give his family a certain type of life, and when he was no longer able to do that, he would rather basically suffer in silence and then eventually decide to remove himself than not be able to give his family that life. I believe unconditionally loving yourself would mean that you would be able to take a step back to ask yourself, why is it that you have to be this in order to even exist? Because you're basically saying that the condition by which you should even exist is if you show up for others in this way. And that's obviously like the most extreme case. But I'm just making the point that a lot of people do this in smaller cases. Like, in order for me to be a good husband, everyone has to know this about me. In order for me to be a good wife or a good son or a good daughter, or whatever, we create these ideas of what it means to be that. And then if we're not able to do that, we sometimes hurt ourselves or hide ourselves away, or we're not willing to really use good words about ourselves. And so I think unconditionally loving yourself is coming from the process of, when you aren't able to show up for yourself in a way that maybe you view yourself as, are you willing to actually get to the bottom of understanding why it matters, and then maybe still being able to love yourself even though you can't show up in that way? Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. It sounds like there's I feel like someone has called this like either limiting beliefs or false beliefs or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, the world must think this about me, or I must, unless I do this, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That isn't. And the example that you use is really interesting too. I'm a father, and this pandemic's been crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
over the last few years, like the cost of food and everything has been like gone up by like 30%.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty crazy that you say some of these things, because the stuff that kind of comes through our minds that like I feel like I'm working a lot more, but my money's not even going as far. It's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
And it hurts. But I mean, like, here's the thing that, again, I make a point of about, I said this earlier, and I just, in case everybody didn't hear it. If God is omniscient, all powerful, and all knowing, then that would mean that God lacks limits. He has no limits. And so if God has no limits, that means that there's not an ability to experience the polarization of what we're able to feel, which is like happiness and sadness, love and hate, because it's all of those things at once. Now, maybe you're like saying, hey, I don't put limits on God. But by definition, if God is omniscient, then God would be in all things and everything at once. That's why, like, when, he created the heavens and the earth and did all these things, it was an extension of him as much as it was him. But like, if he created humans, and humans have this ability to experience but are limited from their perspective, then that would mean that as time is going on, you have the ability to learn from others more about who you are, because you really are technically others. It's just that they have the ability to have that perspective separate from you. So, like, the point I make to people is like, everything that you think you are, your name, your beliefs about who you are, what makes you a good person, what makes you a bad person, what is good about life and what's bad about life, is an idea that someone had to have given you and you both agreed on, and then maybe it's extended out to the culture. Might be Western culture, might be Eastern culture, might be whatever. And so, in turn, with that idea, that means that you also have the ability to let go of those beliefs if they don't serve you anymore. And I feel like for a lot of us, we believe that we are who we are as if it's concrete and we can't change that. And oftentimes that ends up becoming the demise of an individual if they can't get back to being what they believe they were. Because now you're not that, even though you completely believed it was you. And so what's the point of you existing if you can't be what you believed was good? I'm not going to bother other
and
people because that's what they love me for too.
also, like, how valuable is that belief to you, and how
Mm-hmm.
many other beliefs are connected to that belief? This is one of the things that makes it difficult. Like for me, when I'm trying to discover something, it's like, well, that can't be true, because if that's true, then that means I'm way off the mark with this stuff over here.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in theology, you think about things like that. It's like you're trying to understand something, or whatever. But you apply it to philosophy and stuff like that too. But anyway,
And
yeah, that
I
is
also
interesting.
I also make this point. I've said that morals are not really necessary for a society. And people go, well, Django, if there are no morals, what keeps people from hurting each other and doing drugs and doing all these other things? And my point is, if I told you that there's no morals, what would you do? And most people go, oh, like, so actually, let me backtrack because this is actually how the conversation goes. I go, I think that morals are unnecessary. I don't have any. I just treat people with respect and love because I want to. And they go, well, if we just get rid of morals and everything, then I can just go next door and punch someone in the face. I can just go take somebody's wife. And my point is that what you want to do? And then people go, well, it's not what I want to do, but that's what other people would do. And when I ask who are the other people, it's like the people that they don't like or the people that they believe would do that. But there are people that do that even though we have a moral code. So then my question is, why is it that people are willing to do that? Well, what's crazy is if you spend enough time talking to people who do things that are quote unquote bad, they'll give you the reason of why they did it. They have a condition by which they said, hey, it was okay to steal because it's Amazon. Hey, it was okay to hurt that person because of what they said to me. Like, we're all reasoning as to why it's okay for us to break our moral compass because of the the reasoning that we give, that we say it's completely okay. I just make the point that if you actually have no moral compass and you just love everybody and you want to understand and accept everyone, there's not a need to have morals. There's not a need for me to say, I'm not going to punch this person in the mouth. I don't want to punch anybody in the mouth. Like,
Well, in that case, wouldn't more? I still believe there is morals and their
mhm.
morals are necessary because in that case, um, some would you say that animals have morals?
No, they don't have morals. I don't think so.
Okay, so what prevents an animal from doing whatever it chooses?
But an animal does what it needs. So, like,
Right.
a lion eats the zebra because it needs to eat, and that's just the way the kingdom was set up.
But I remember seeing a video just recently of a gorilla in New York
Hmm.
on the news, and he would take his child, even though
Uh-huh.
his wife or whatever you want to say,
Hmm.
Mama Gorilla, didn't want him to, and he would run around with it for pure enjoyment, even
Hmm.
though she would yell at him and smack him and stuff for that for
Hmm.
doing what he chose to do.
Hmm.
Um, if that choice of what he chose to do was much more heinous, I
Hmm.
believe the group of gorillas, aka society,
Hmm.
would all punish him
Hmm.
for doing what he chose to do.
Hmm.
So doesn't that lead to almost a societal standard for morals?
It does, but I guess here's my point. For me as an individual, I can't control others in any capacity. But what I have said is that I don't personally need morals because I just love everybody. So I want for others what I would want for myself, which is to be understood and accepted. That's like the baseline of what I think every human being is trying to find. That's why you become a football fan or you love certain movies or whatever. Like, you find your crew and now you all have a shared experience without necessarily having to start over from scratch every time you see each other. And then you build these experiences together and now you have history and you love each other. I go out of my way to make the point that I don't need morals in order to make that choice. And I unconditionally love everyone else, regardless of how anyone else responds to me. Now, people then make the point of, well, what about all these other people? My point is again the same. I can't control other people. But if I'm always waiting on other people to do the right thing, then no one's ever doing it. Like, whatever it is that I believe is right. And what I believe is right for my life is I want other people to do to me what I would want done to them. And that's to be unconditionally loved. And so I make the point as a reference of this is what I do, not that this is what society has to do or this is what my family has to do. Does that make sense? Like, and so that's it. That's just my premise. I don't need morality in order to make these decisions. And then if someone else goes, oh well, yeah, I guess maybe I don't, then now we have two people who are willing to unconditionally love, and then we can unconditionally love each other. And then if that person decides they don't want to unconditionally love me anymore, they could still do that. But I'm integrated in a way that, like, I don't need anything from you. I'm just enjoying my life in the moment of how I want to live it, and I'm being open and transparent with everybody I meet.
Well, it makes sense on an individual scale,
Mhm.
and it even makes sense on a small group. But how would that interact with all of society?
Well, I don't know. Again, like,
Yeah.
Society is a bunch of individuals who make up small groups that then make up big groups. The reason that Christianity is accepted is because Peter got it started at one point as the individual after Jesus died, and then went out and then got small groups to accept it, and then those small groups got big groups to accept it, and then eventually we had the Catholic Church that accepted it, and now we're here after Martin Luther and all these other ideas. Someone has to be the person who starts as an individual to make an argument that society may or may not need something. That's how it starts. I mean, there's no way around it. So my premise is, as a culture, we're in a constant state of looking to others to start it, whether that be like a church a or the government. And my point is I'm not looking for anyone to start anything. If you like, I go on TikTok every day. I make 3 to 5 videos every day, making a point that we all have the capacity to unconditionally love, and maybe we could shift the culture starting with ourselves. And like, I don't know what'll happen with that, but I enjoy it personally, so that's why I do it. And there's nothing else to it. I don't want to live my life another way. I'm just living my life how I want, you know? And
That's good.
it's chill. I mean, but I think like that's at the end of the day, I have a video that was called Maybe We Misunderstood Jesus. And the point I made is that Jesus literally, from the point that Peter starts his book, or that Matthew starts his book, is literally walking around loving people the whole time. He doesn't stop and set up a church. He doesn't stop and try to convert. He literally is walking around and just talking to people about what it is that they may be missing. At no point did he say, I need you guys to set up a church. I need you guys to do those things. And I think Peter basically was looking to recreate that relationship that he had with the 11 other disciples in Jesus, and then looked to start the church. And then from that, then all these rules got started, and like all these things started happening, and it was like, this is how we have to live to live in this community or whatever. But if you think historically, like, Jesus was never doing any of that. He just was like leading by example. He was like, doesn't matter if someone attacks me, doesn't matter if people hate me, doesn't matter if Satan pulls up. All I'm showing is love and reminding people that they have the autonomy to choose to love themselves, to, pick up their mat and leave, to, cure blindness or whatever the case was. And so like, I'm not necessarily saying I'm Jesus or anything, but I'm like, why defer from his playbook? Like, why try to force society to do all these different things? Why not just show up as myself and love
I
people as I can?
absolutely agree. And I just want to say something on that real quick
Oh, yeah.
because, we all have battled. Well, I don't know what we all have battled, but I know for me, like, spirit, God, Wayne Dyer once said there's 110 different ways to say the word water. If I throw it on you, you're going to get wet. I don't care what we call it. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
whatever that is, that's very important to me. And, going through challenges and struggles in my life, I was walking down the street one day and, shit, life ain't fair. Shit, it's just not fair. And so I'm sitting around here. I've been good to people, this and that. And so I'm just like, you know what? I don't even care if I get anything. I don't care if anything happens for me.
Hmm.
I'm a good person. I'm not going to just do people wrong, regardless of whether there's a God or not.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether Jesus was here or not, regardless of anything, I, as a person, love people. So I
Hmm.
couldn't do anything bad to people because it's not in me to do
Hmm.
that. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
I
So
feel that.
I absolutely agree with that right there.
And again, like for most people, it is transactional though, right? Like I'll do unto you what you're willing to do unto me. And some people will be like willing to steal from Amazon because they feel like Amazon steals from them, or they'll steal from Walmart in the self line because they feel like it's cool. I think culturally, like we're watching what happens when our perspective of what we believe is good or bad is taken to an extreme, because a lot of people feel like it's within their right that they've been robbed by other people, that it's their turn to get what they deserved. And I can completely understand why you might feel that way, right? Like you had expectations of life, those expectations aren't met. If that's how the society is going to function, then I don't want anything to do with it. And I'll burn the society to the ground. I mean, like this is what's happened in many occasions with many cultures. So my point is like I'm going to do what I like doing because I like doing it. And I'm not going to worry about whether or not other people accept it or if they even agree. I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to continue to love people to the best of my ability. And I'm going to take time to try to understand people. And what I've recognized is that in a lot of people, it really frustrates them when I ask questions because they don't want questions to be asked. And then they might think I'm gaslighting, or they may think I have an answer that I'm expecting from them. And at the end of the day, they can't accept my belief because they don't accept that belief about themselves. But all I can do is just try to love them and offer that as potential of like, I am genuine. I mean it. Like, I just love you. And that's because I love myself. And I know that I'm going to learn more about myself from talking to you. And I think that's dope. That's all I got.
Yes. People definitely always think I have ulterior motives, and it's sad.
Hmm.
And I'm like, no. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
just keep living.
Hmm.
Allow me to show you. I always tell people, just allow me to show you. If you don't trust me, then
Hmm.
stick around.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna change as far as who I am as a person.
Right.
I always will grow, but
Hmm.
the center and core of me is I love you. You ain't gotta
Hmm.
love me back. I love people who done stepped on me and hurt me. Are they in
Hmm.
my life? Hell no. They're not in my life no more because I have requirements to be in my life.
Hmm.
But hell yeah, I love them still to
Hmm.
this day. Don't wish bad on them. Hope they
Yeah.
still grow. Hope they still learn. Hope they heal. That's what unconditional love is to me.
Yeah, and I feel that. I want people to feel like they can be who they are, and I'm not going to judge them. That you can open up and tell me, "Hey, I cheated," or I hurt someone, or I made these mistakes in my past, and I'll hear you out. Like, it's all good. I have no judgment. I have no point of emphasis to make you feel bad about it. I just want us to be able to curate space for people to love each other. So, if you guys are here, for the people that are here, I love you so much. I think y'all are amazing, incredible, fantastic, fabulous, sensational, divine, tantalizing, immaculate. It's really helpful when you guys share my videos or share my lives because more people find out about it. So if you comment on my stuff, or if you see a video you like, if you can repost it, it would mean a lot. That actually is like helping a lot in the TikTok algorithm as well as saving. And also comment. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you guys notice, I try to respond to as many comments. If you ask a question in a comment to a video, I'll 9 times out of 10 respond. So I love you guys very much. Thank you, everyone. Church Talks, Prophet, C Square, everyone who came up. I love you all very much. It's been about 2 hours, so I got to go eat some dinner. You guys are
Can I ask
amazing.
you a question real quick?
Yeah, yeah. What's
You
up?
you mentioned earlier you're writing a book. Have you completed any previous books that I should be looking for,
No,
or?
no, no. So I have a technology background, so I've been building tools for authors for a while, but I decided to write a book publicly, and I'm sort of writing it from my perspective of questions that I ask myself without necessarily giving an answer. So if you go to entermythoughts.com, which is the link in my bio, you'll actually see the that I have 4 thoughts that are up right now, and I try to do at least a thought a week or 2 thoughts a week. And basically, like, from conversations like this, I'll say a point of, like, maybe the question is, can we unconditionally love if we set parameters to our love or something? And then I basically write about, like, the questions that I'm asking myself and some of the conclusions I've come to. And when I get to 100, I am going to just make it a book and sell the physical copies of it.
Amazing. I can't wait.
Oh, thank you so much, man. You're amazing. And Genesis, thank you for being here. C Square, do not be a stranger. Feel free to message me. I think I added you. Hold on, let me double check. Oh, I followed you back. And Church Talk, same thing, man. I really enjoyed talking to you all. I love you all very much. And if you ever need anything, feel free to reach out, all right?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Do you think?